Good evening, everybody. It is Thursday night in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joined for our Steelers NFL Draft live stream by Jason Mackey on my right. I guess your left, and Christopher Carter on my left, your right. We're going to be here all night at Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore, talking about the draft from a Steelers perspective, a Pittsburgh perspective. If you turn on ESPN NFL Network, those guys do a great job of covering all the teams, but they talk about the Steelers for one fraction of the time. They talk about all the other teams. So if you're looking for an evening full of Steelers analysis, we've got you right here at Mike's Beer Bar. If you'd like to come on down, hundreds of beers on tap in cans and bottles. They're taking great care of us. They will take great care of you if you come on down. So thank you to Mike's for hosting us. With that said, let's get into the show, guys. I will start with Jason. It's been a busy day of mock drafting. There's been a very late break nationally toward Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, the quarterback. Locally, I think all of us are still on the defensive lineman. What do you make of all these national pundits breaking so late for Shedeur Sanders?
Mentality, Adam, and it drives me crazy. I want him to see the pick actually made. I understand the fuss with Shedeur Sanders. It's certainly not a criticism, but the Steelers' greater need is defensive line. This should be the most simple pick that they make. If anybody watched the end of last season and how poorly the Steelers fared against the run, it should be defensive line. They need a successor to Cam Hayward. There's four really good options right in front of them. Mason Graham probably isn't going to fall to them, but a lot of really great players. You're overcomplicating things. Again, nothing against Shedeur Sanders. It's just, we saw this all throughout the draft process, and it drives me crazy. There's one name, somebody likes it, other people follow. All of a sudden, that's the hot name. Then there's another name, one person follows, then there's a herd. And, we've seen it with Jaxson Dart. We're seeing it with Shedeur Sanders. I don't know how much I'm buying into it.
Christopher, you got our best available scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Talk to me about who you like and how you're viewing the way these late mock drafts are breaking and what bearing you think it has on what the ultimate outcome is going to be here.
It does look like the Steelers are going to get their pick at defensive tackle. The question will be, if Shedeur Sanders does fall at the top 10, I honestly think there's several smoke screens up right now by all the NFL teams about what they really think about at quarterback. This is a team right now, the Steelers, that they do need a quarterback. Like let's make it clear that, like, Jason, like, it's not that they don't need a quarterback, but it's just that the talent at D tackle, you can get a premier future superstar D tackle in the first round. We just aren't sure if they can get that at quarterback right now. And that's why there's the hang-up. Personally, when I grade Shedeur Sanders, I love his precision. I love his throwing motion. I love his accuracy. I do not love his arm strength. I do not love his athleticism. He's not a fast quarterback, and he's not tall. And so when you take a lot of those things into account, he's going to have to be the best processor on the field so many times to win consistently, and that's why I'm just not sure that he's the first round pick you want. Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin, they have to, if they want to get this right, they have to make sure that there are so many factors in their favor when they go and they make their next first round pick at quarterback, because Kenny Pickett wasn't it. Granted, that wasn't Omar Khan, that was Kevin Colbert, but that was what they were locked into. It set them back years. If they draft Shedeur Sanders this year in the first round, it's going to make it mighty tough on them to develop around the quarterback position, especially if they really like the quarterbacks that are coming out next year, which we understand they do.
Here's my problem with it, Chris. If you're telling me that the Steelers want to compete in 2025, which by signing a 41-year-old quarterback, they're telling me they do. They're saying 2025 is our year. We think we can win in the playoffs. We think we can go places. The Shedeur Sanders pick doesn't get me anywhere. I want them to do something that addresses 2025. Either that or move off of Aaron Rodgers, which I don't think they're going to do. I think they're going to wait. They're mixed messages. I don't understand why you would do both of those things. So, I mean, if Sanders falls, I agree with everything you're saying, but I disagree with the team building component. I'd want to use, if I'm gonna stick with Aaron Rodgers, I want that pick to help this year's team.
No, listen, you can help this year's team and build a team. That's what I'm saying. Like, you get a Kenneth Grant, you get a Derrick Harmon, you get a Walter Nolen. Any one of those three guys.
Right now.
They help them right now, and you need a pillar player on the D-line moving forward. Like you said, they got bullied by the Ravens. Tyler Linderbaum and the interior of that offensive line, they moved everyone not named Cam Hayward all over the place, and that caused problems everywhere else. If you look back at the great Steelers defenses of the 2000s, of the 2010s, of the 70s, of the 90s, what did they all have in common? Their interior defensive lines were stout. From Joe Green to Ernie Holmes to Casey Hampton to Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt when they were in their primes. Those are the factors that made it so tough on teams to be able to focus on your edge rushers, to be able to focus on everything else, because they were so caught up with what's going on in the middle part of the defense, and that's what the Steelers have to get back to being great at. They have Cam Hayward he's still an all-pro guy. I think Keanu Benton is another piece to that puzzle, but they need a dominant force, which is why I think D-tackle in the first round is a priority over, because I think a lot of people say, oh, well, it's a deep defensive tackle class. You can get him in the third or the fourth round, and he'll still be a starter. Maybe they'll be a starter, but they won't be a superstar, and that's what you're looking for if you're going for that position in the first round.
Here's what frustrated me, gentlemen, about some of the mock drafts I read today. I read Daniel Jeremiah, who picked Shedeur Sanders to the Steelers, and his justification was, well, if he doesn't go to the Steelers, I don't know who he's going to go to, as if there was no possibility that maybe he could drop out of the first round, like many of those guys they mocked to the Steelers in 2022 when they ultimately selected Kenny Pickett did. Sam Howell, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, all of those guys were mocked to the first round to the Steelers at one point in time, and the teams of the NFL decided that they were not worthy of first-round picks. And I think there's this mentality in this mock draft world, well, we think Shedeur Sanders is a first-round talent, so therefore we have to send him to a team. What is the team that's most desperate for the quarterback? It's the Steelers, and that becomes the logic for the pick. If that's the logic the Steelers choose, and if they ultimately chose Shedeur Sanders, that's terrible logic, and I think you can make a good pick for bad reasons, and that's a bad reason to me. He's a first-round talent. We might as well add him. I don't think the Steelers are going to behave that way, but if you'd asked me 3 years ago if I thought they were going to do that, I would have said the same thing, and they ended up going with Kenny Pickett. So what is your view on Shedeur Sanders? This is probably the best way to ask this question. What's your view of Shedeur Sanders overall as a prospect? Is he a first-round talent, regardless of how the Steelers fit into that situation? I'll start with Chris.
I don't think he's a first-round talent. I have him graded as 44th on my top 100 big board. Again, I think he has moxie. I think he has character. I think he has leadership capabilities. I think he's tough. I think that he's very accurate when you see what he does there. But that's just the thing. I need to see arm strength. I need to see him throw on time in an NFL style of offense. So many of his best plays, when you looked at what Shedeur Sanders did for Colorado, were often sandbox plays where he'd roam around, he'd look for an open guy, and then he'd fire a pass, and you'd be like, whoa, what a throw there from Shedeur Sanders. You need him to read what defenses are doing, read the cover 2, read the cover 3, read the cover 4, and then say, okay, we're hitting this window, bang, hitting it there. So many of his throws were, we're going to float it here, we're going to float it there, and he's going to put some great touch on it. But when you need him to throw that 25, 30-yard laser and down the seam, that's what I don't know if he can do that consistently in the NFL with enough velocity that's going to keep NFL corners and safeties from from feeding off of what he's doing. Plus, I also don't like the way he dealt with pressure in college. I thought that there were so many times that he would escape that I was like, okay, great job there. That's not gonna translate well. It's a lot like what Kenny Pickett went through, where he did a lot of good things in college, and you saw him at Pitt. He was finished third in the Heisman voting, but when you saw how it translated to the NFL, he needed a lot of work, and he needed to have a lot of things going his way. That's just why I don't think Shedeur Sanders is that guy this year. If he's a second-round pick, fine. All for that. First round, there's too many elite potential players on the board at 21 that I think that you can pass up to go for a guy who I think right now is a backup quarterback.
I was going to bring something up earlier, Chris, and it fits well to build on what you're saying. Let's step back for a second. Let's think about this draft and how it's classified overall. This was not thought of a good draft for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So why are the Steelers going to take a quarterback in the first round?
It's been said that for years, Jason. Like, we talked last year when they signed Russell Wilson, they traded for Justin Fields, it was with the knowledge that they needed to get one of those guys to last through this year's draft class, because they knew even before Carson Beck wasn't in it and a few other guys weren't in it, that this was not going to be the year to get a quarterback. This has long been known, so I'm right with you. Why would you commit to a quarterback in a year when you know it's a bad quarterback draft class?
Yeah, I just don't think it's a great look, and you're committing to a guy that a lot of people have dropping down the draft boards for whatever reason. I don't love it. If you're taking a quarterback in the first round, there better be no questions. You know, and if that takes a 5-win season to get there, I'm totally fine with that. And maybe that happens to the Steelers this year. Great. Take one in 2026. But right now, there are far too many questions. You outlined them about Shedeur Sanders. That being said, I wouldn't hate it if they picked him. They do need to figure out the quarterback position. I think some of that stuff tends to get overcooked, how a guy functions in college. He's going to have an opportunity to develop. He's going to have better players around him. Hopefully, cross some fingers, dear God, he's going to have a better offensive system than what the Steelers have shown. I think there's the possibility that those results improve quickly. But again, if I'm taking a guy 21 overall, I want no questions about his ability to contribute.
Chris, before we get too deep into the Steelers talk, did want to get your thoughts on the top of the draft here. It's looking like Cam Ward's going to be the guy for Tennessee at number one. You have Abdul Carter as your number one overall prospect in the draft. Travis Hunter's obviously also in this mix as well as a very talented two-way possibility in this draft. Talk to me about how you break down those top three and why you arrived at the conclusion you did with that.
I think Abdul Carter is the best pure prospect. Like, as far as what he does, he has the potential to be TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, next level superstar edge rusher talent. Like, that's why I put him there. And when you get that kind of a guy, you put him at the top of the board. He has all those traits. But the thing is, I mock Cam Ward to the Titans because they need a quarterback badly, and Cam Ward is a potential franchise-style quarterback. That is where I think that he's the one guy that I would draft in the first round this year, and I think that's why they're going with him. I like his traits. I think he has the arm strength. He has better mobility. He has a bit better size. Those are the things that I think translate well. That's why I have him going to the Titans. That's why he's probably going to get picked here momentarily. The pick is now in, according to all the sites here. So we'll see how that plays out. But Abdul Carter, number one. Right behind him, though, is Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is a generational talent on either side of the ball. You get him in your locker room, you're going to be a happy camper. So I have my mock draft, as I have it going, is Cam Ward here to the Titans, Travis Hunter to the Browns at 2, and then the Giants get Abdul Carter at 3.
Could the Browns package Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders? What do you guys think?
They could. They could try to trade back up and go get Shedeur at some point.
I'm fascinated by that. With the division implications, the regional implications. You take Travis Hunter and try to get his college quarterback, man, what a storyline that would be.
That would be nuts. That'd be nuts.
Jason, who do you fear more on the Browns in the division? Someone you see twice a year. Is it Abdul Carter? Is it Travis Hunter as a two-way option? I say that I think specifically with the Browns, you don't want to see Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett together, especially because Myles Garrett just re-signed.
You're
for all
just taking
those
the
years.
Penn State guy. Come on.
I think that's more fearsome. And then my thing with Travis Hunter is I think he's going to be a really good player both ways, but I don't know if he'll ever be as dominant on one side of the ball as Abdul Carter will be for a long time. And if I was Cleveland, I think that's why I'd opt more for Carter. But I can see the argument for Travis Hunter as well. Who would you fear more?
Yeah, I'd fear Carter more. I would.
You better fear Carter more.
I know, we all fear Carter. But I mean, trying to block Myles Garrett, Abdul Carter, you're absolutely right, Adam. I mean, that's something that's going to be a major implication for the Steelers. I like Abdul Carter a lot. I kind of curious where he would line up in Cleveland. I mean, he did a couple different things at Penn State, changed positions prior to this past year.
Guys, we got movement. We got movement
what
here.
Do we got?
The Browns and the Jaguars have agreed to a blockbuster trade, giving the Jaguars the number 2 overall pick. The Browns get number 5 and a haul for picks that we're figuring out. This coming from Ian Rappaport. The NFL draft is underway, baby.
Things are happening.
Goes to the Titans.
Things are happening. So the Browns moving down. Maybe they're moving out of that conversation we were just having moments ago. It's curious to see who Jacksonville is moving up to take. Chris is working the phone here. Maybe he can get us an answer. What do you think of Cleveland moving down? Because you got to figure Jason, at number 5, they're not going to get a chance at Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter now. They got to really like someone else to do something like that.
Yeah, I wonder who they're after. I'm just thinking quickly. I mean, what the strategy there, I don't love it, frankly, for Cleveland. I thought there was a great opportunity to take somebody number 2.
Well, in Mr. Carter's best available, you have Will Campbell of LSU, the offensive tackles next, then Ashton Genty, an exciting running back. We know how they love to run the ball.
You think
up
that's
in
what they're
Cleveland.
doing?
No, you know what? I think the Jaguars, maybe this is for Abdul Carter. Maybe they're getting their edge rush because they've been trying to get edge rusher right for years, and they haven't gotten the right guy that's been the superstar player.
Right, but who's Cleveland moving down to take?
Maybe that's a tough question there.
Ashton Genty's intriguing.
Yeah, with them not having Nick Chubb anymore, that would be a dynamic presence in their backfield.
Wow.
Mason Graham is another name that you wonder if they still want to create a fearsome defensive line. They'd be able to do that. Mason Graham, Myles Garrett, that's still pretty scary. I don't know if it's as scary on the edge because obviously Mason Graham plays a little bit more inside, but he's a very solid player. Certainly would not like to run into that if you're the Steelers. So going to be interested to see. I think I'm more interested in seeing what Cleveland is going to do now than I am in who the Jaguars are trading up to get. But yeah, that news is official. They're now updating the graphics on the NFL Network and ESPN.
Nuts.
I think the trade's probably a good jumping off point. You got something, Chris?
So looks like we got the compensation here. The Browns. So the Jaguars are getting the 2nd overall pick, the 104th overall pick, a 4th rounder, and a 6th rounder. The Browns are getting the 5th overall pick. The Jaguars 2nd overall pick, 2nd round pick from this year, a 4th round pick from this year, and a 1st from next year. So the Browns now they get a 1st next year on top of what they already have. This is ammunition for them to stay in the top 5, still get an elite level player, get an extra 2nd round pick, and they get another 1st round pick so that they can be major players for getting one of the quarterbacks that we've been talking about for next year. I think this is a really smart move by the Browns when you get that extra 1st round pick on top of staying in the top 5 of the 1st round this year.
I do too. A rare win by the Browns. I like this a lot, man. And you're still, like you said, Chris, you're going to get a very good player and you could address a need. I mean, I like the idea of Abdul Carter, don't get me wrong, but I'm also thinking about Ashton Genty as a possibility, and there's a lot of really good players they can take in that spot.
Yeah, Kevin Costner's active. Kevin Costner's active in the draft room. I finally watched Draft Day. I'd never watched the movie until about a week ago. I was a little underwhelmed by the moves that were ultimately made.
Terrible move.
Stop it, Chris.
It's the biggest joke
compared to like what just happened in real life. You
Stop
know,
it. It's a good movie.
Maybe it's because it's a little dated. I don't know about that. Kevin Costner's moved on to bigger and better things since then, is how I would put it. But very interesting that it's a. Where were the draft? I think the Browns were picking number 7 in that draft, and they traded up to number 1. Then they traded back. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. Just enjoying my pancakes.
Yes,
I love that scene.
Gentlemen, I guess this is probably a good jumping off point as we wait to see what Jacksonville does. How do we feel about the possibility of the Steelers making a trade tonight, either up or down? Omar Khan spoke to reporters on Tuesday. He said, it's probably more trading back, and there's one level where it makes the logical sense for that to be true, right? Where, they just don't have the draft capital this year to do a huge trade up, but it also makes you wonder if he's blowing a little smoke there to throw people off the scent. What say you guys about the possibility of trading either up or down?
Trading down is the move.
Yep.
Trading down is absolutely the move.
I don't see how they trade up.
They've already lost their 2nd round pick for DK Metcalf. They cannot afford to keep giving up more capital and move up right now. I think that right now the key is trade back, get that day 2 pick back in your stocks. Probably won't be a 2nd rounder, probably will be an early 3rd rounder, but that'll put you right in the range. That's the sweet spot of this draft. A lot of running backs are valued there, really good starter running backs. You can still get good corners, good receivers. There's a lot of really good players. There's also, that's the range where Jalen Milroe might be. And Jalen Milroe is that's the range where I think of backup quarterback starts to become a viable option for the Steelers. So for me, trading back in the 1st round to get that extra 2nd or 3rd round pick, that would be a great move for the Steelers if they could still land one of these top defensive tackles we're talking about.
A lot of these availabilities of people, Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, before the draft, I think it's a lot of smoke, a lot of stuff that we shouldn't read into. I think he was being truthful and saying, it's really not likely for them to move up because it's not. They have too many needs.
We got the number 2 pick, and it is Travis Hunter. He is going to the Jaguars.
Very interesting. I think you're probably happy not to see him in the division. We were talking about, who do the Browns get, but certainly better for him not to be in the division for the Steelers. How do you guys, Chris, I wanted to get your thoughts on how good Travis Hunter can be at any one position. Do you think he has the ability to be a top 5 receiver, a top 5 cornerback, a top 10 receiver, top 10 quarterback?
I think he has top 10 receiver potential. I think he has top 5 cornerback potential. I love his cornerback play better than his wide receiver play. Both are very impressive. Both are generational. But when I look at his ability to mirror guys, it's so insane. And like, he'll get beat here and there, but like the shutdown capabilities this guy has, Adam, like, this is going to be a really, really good guy in the NFL, wherever he's placed. And so I think that part of this might be is that, like, the Browns talked about him like a wide receiver. I think he's better as a corner. And that might be what's going on here, is that they were thinking, look, he's a top 10 wide receiver, but we're looking for, at the second overall pick, we want a top 5, top 2 type of player. And so we're going to pass on that, where the Jaguars might say, this guy could be the best cornerback in the NFL in a couple of years.
You know what I think is interesting, guys? I mean, the Jaguars clearly had something in mind here. Like, they've clearly got a role that they envision for Travis Hunter, what they plan to do with him, which I can't imagine, again, is limiting him to one or the other. That was one situation or question that I had about Travis Hunter, is he going to have a legitimate opportunity to do both? And the idea of a team trading up to get him, clearly valuing what makes him special, obviously they're going to let him do that, or maybe I'm reading between the lines that I shouldn't, but I'm intrigued by that as well.
How many snaps can a guy realistically play both ways in the NFL? We have not seen that barely at all.
I would not even try it. I'm honestly, and like,
but they're going to.
They should not.
Why?
Because you'll wear that guy down so fast in the NFL. College, you can get away with it. Pros, that is a different animal.
Where do you think they slice snaps?
Wide receiver.
Yeah.
He is a corner. Put him outside. Let him lock up with the best receivers in the NFL. I think he will erase people. Cornerback is still a pillar position in football right now. That's my opinion. I think that he can be a generational cornerback before a wide receiver. Let's see how he gets announced here, because I think that's going to be interesting if they slap a cornerback tag on him instead of a wide receiver, or vice versa there.
Oh, it's going to be a slash, Chris.
That'd be
WR/CB or flip it.
Hate it.
I mean, why would you commit to that?
Yeah,
why would you commit to that right now?
Yeah, you're right. I want you to commit to it for me, baby. That's all I'm talking about.
We're getting the long filibuster here, a long impassioned speech that I can't hear because I've got headphones on. But I think the thing about Travis Hunter for me that is most interesting is, yes, how much could he do? Do you deploy him 10 snaps in crunch time late in the game at receiver, get a little more speed on the field, get a little more talent? Not going to do it in the first quarter maybe, but if you're in a desperate situation, is that when you maybe see him, Chris? And there it is. It's CB/WR.
Yeah.
That is how he was announced going to the Jaguars.
But WR is first.
WR is?
Right.
No, CB is first on NFL Network.
And on ESPN.
Yes, and on ESPN.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was looking on our screen.
No, it's all good.
Yep.
But I think this is interesting. He goes where I thought he would go at 2, because I think that you could say he has that potential. If Abdul Carter wasn't hurt, I think this would be him right now.
You think the injury still has that much bearing on Abdul Carter?
I think people are a little hesitant, just a little bit. Not too much. He's still going to go top. He'll probably go right next to the Giants, right here. But like, sometimes when you want that 1 or 2 pick up top, you want that to be extremely healthy, no questions asked, and that might play a factor here. But Travis Hunter going to the Jaguars here, huge move in the AFC South as the Jaguars are trying to get back to relevancy, because they've got Trevor Lawrence, they've signed ATN to his 5th-year option. They've got him, or they still got him around. So that's another reason to wonder, where will he go? Will he be Trevor Lawrence's new top target, or will he be their ace defender on the other side of the ball? Or will they try to go both? I think it'd be crazy to try to go both.
Travis Hunter is fired up. As fired up as I see some of these guys coming out, dancing.
Good for him.
What do we think of the hot pink suits? I think it looks pretty sharp. But I know
Better on him than me. I know that.
Yeah, I couldn't get away with it.
Yes, you could.
You're right. What am I saying?
You could pull that
What am
off.
I saying?
Adam and I, not a prayer.
Hey,
Especially not me.
Hey, I think I could do it.
No.
Might have to think a little wider cut. I think I could pull it off. I believe in myself. But gentlemen, so now we're going to go down to Abdul Carter probably next. Let's get back to that Browns conversation. I think it's probably the most interesting thing happening right now. Chris, I got Jason's thoughts on this. Who do you think is most interesting for the Browns now that they're at number 5?
So let me pull up my big board here. So we've got Hunter and Ward off the board. I assume Abdul Carter's going to be gone. I assume Will Campbell's going to be gone. You know, I wouldn't be mad at Jaxson Dart, a generational running back this year. But here's the other thing. This Browns team, their offensive line is aging. They need to get replenishments there. Maybe they go for Membao. Maybe they go for one of those guys. But if I'm at the Browns, I'm looking at Dart really hard because Nick Chubb's not there anymore. And they've been a big part of what their offense has been is having a dynamic run game. And you throw him in your system, he's a dynamic run. That is a dynamic run game all over again. So maybe that's what they're trading down for is because they really want Jaxson Dart.
Is the valuation of the running back changing in the NFL given what Saquon Barkley did this past season? I think the last handful of cycles, going back to Najee Harris, Jason, we said, running backs are fungible. You can stick most of those guys from the college, most of the best college running backs in there. They're going to do solidly, but now we've seen a team built around a running back. Chris, you got news for me?
Abdul Carter to the Giants. We are 3 for 3 on our picks here so far.
Didn't have the teams, obviously, but do have the picks so far. But
Yes,
I'll just finish with the question there, Jason. Is the tide swinging back to some of these running backs? Is that why Ashton Jeanty might be valued so highly by the Browns that not only do they take him with the number 5 pick, but they're willing to trade back to get him rather than some of these guys that are further up?
Well, here's what I think is fascinating about running backs and right now in the NFL and how they're being looked at. If you've got a guy like Ashton Jeanty has fallen into this category, Omarion Hampton, easy for me to say, I think also falls into this category. A genuine, workhorse, 3 down, not coming off the field, carry your offense kind of back. Those guys are viewed as premium. But still, the largest crowd, all of them are in this cluster of the 4th, 5th, 6th round later. If you can separate yourself from the pack, you're going to be really popular. You're going to have an opportunity. You're going to be Ashton Jeanty and theoretically go in the top 5 and whatever. So I think that's the impact that it's had. It's shined a greater light on the guys that are feature backs, true feature backs, but there's still a pack, a cluster where they feel plug and play. These guys aren't all that special. I don't want to say it that way. That feels disrespectful, but still somebody that you can kind of rotate.
What do you guys make of the small college label? Obviously, Boise State makes it to the college football playoff. They run into a tough Penn State defense that bottled Ashton Jeanty up pretty well. But if you watched him the whole rest of the season, Chris, he looked like he had Sunday speed to me, Sunday ability. What are your thoughts on Ashton Jeanty as a prospect?
I think he has the potential to be the next Saquon Barkley. He's that explosive. He's that quick in space. I think Penn State showed hey, eventually the NIL money's gonna kick in. When we can spend all across, you could probably spend on 1 or 2 guys. We can spend on 30 guys, and that's kind of what Boise State ran up against there. And I wasn't shocked by Penn State doing that, what they did. But still, you put Ashton Jeanty in an offense with a good offensive line, with a comparable quarterback that keeps the pressure off him. He can be so dangerous, and he'll make the quarterback that way life easier for the quarterback. That's why I think that could be where they're looking at, moving back to 5 and getting him still. And here's the crazy part. They may have just gotten a generational running back. Again, we have to see how this plays out. Carter's going to the Giants. Patriots are up next. They're probably going to take Will Campbell. But if the Browns take Jeanty there, you got a generational running back. You have
a whole haul.
And a haul of an extra 2nd-round pick and a 1st-round pick next year, so that if you don't believe in quarterbacks this year, if they don't believe in Shedeur Sanders, I don't believe in Shedeur Sanders as a 1st-round pick, they can be in the front of the line next year to say, hey, you know what? we're trading up. We're getting Arch Manning. We're getting Lenore Sellers. We're getting Russ Nussmeier, whatever, whoever's the quarterbacks that are in next year's class that everyone's excited about. Because I think that's going to be a really good class next year.
Let's circle back to the Steelers for a minute as we wait out the 4th pick, and then we get to the Browns at 5, see what they ultimately do after that big trade. There was a lot of groupthink in the Post-Gazette newsroom this year, gentlemen. Jerry Dulac goes Kenneth Grant in his, not really mock draft, just Jerry submits his pick at the end. That's his tradition. He goes Kenneth Grant from Michigan. I believe everyone else, so you, Jason, you, Chris, Brian Batko, and Ray Fittipaldo, both of whom will be joining us from the Southside facility later on tonight, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But all 4 of you went with Derrick Harmon from Oregon. Let me ask the question this way. Is that an echo chamber effect, or do you guys all individually love Derrick Harmon?
I went Kenneth Grant.
Oh, you did go Kenneth Grant in the end.
In the first, what I did my 7-round mock, it was a simulation. That was last week, and it was a simulation where Grant was off the board. But in my first round, for my full first round mock, I went Kenneth Grant for tonight, and particularly because I think he is the run stuffer that can be a pass rusher in the middle of the defense. Whereas Derrick Harmon, I think he's the pass rusher that can be the run stuffer, and they need that guy to stuff the run right now who can do that and then develop as a better pass rusher.
Yeah, that's well laid out by Chris. I'm not saying I went with the group think, but I am looking at a Cam Hayward type of body build replacement. The idea of rushing the passer off the edge and in sub packages is what attracted me the most. I probably overvalued the pass rushing ability and didn't think as much about the run stuffing. I was honestly intrigued by Walter Nolen as well. I think there's a lot of upside there. Yeah. But the fact that they need something more for 2025 is why I went with Derrick Harmon. They're kind of interchangeable in my mind. You can make the argument, Chris just did very well, that it's more important because the need is run stuffing. I like the idea of a successor to Cam Hayward, and it's more of a traditional body build. Derrick Harmon to me is like a bigger, better, and obviously younger, maybe more athletic Cam Hayward. I like the makeup there, but again, I couldn't disagree with somebody taking Kenneth Grant.
Put Walter Nolen on that continuum for the viewers, though, Chris. Derrick Harmon is the pass rusher with some run-stopping skills. Kenneth Grant's the run-stopper with some pass-rushing skills. Where is Walter Nolen for you in there?
Walter Nolen might have the highest upside of both, or over both of them, but he has, I think, the most inconsistencies as well. He's also young at 21. But he has extremely good power. I think he's a better pass rusher right now than he is a run stuffer, but I think that when he locks in and he gets his hands right and he gets his footwork right, he is a dominant force at the point of attack, and he can throw away some really big, talented offensive linemen. I would not be shocked if Walter Nolen ends up getting picked before either of those guys because of his upside. In fact, I have him getting picked before either of them at 11th overall by the Niners. But when I look at what Walter Nolen brings to the table, his upside, his potential, it's all right there. And that's what a lot of teams want to draft for in the first round. They want to draft for how can you be elite? And I think he has the tools to become he has the highest ceiling. Now the problem is, can you get to that ceiling? Because there's a lot of players with really high ceilings with the speed, with the size, with the athleticism, with whatever position you look at, but you got to put it all together. I just think right now, Kenneth Grant and Derrick Harmon, I think they have a little bit put together in my eyes when I look at them and watch their tapes.
How do these guys compare to the defensive linemen that were available in 2022? Because a lot of people have been making the point. They're saying, the Steelers. We were all talking about Jordan Davis, for example, who has turned out well for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. But, a lot of people at the time thought maybe the Steelers would go Jordan Davis. They go Kenny Pickett instead. And clearly they were not as impressed with that defensive line class enough to choose him over some of these quarterbacks that have questions around them. So how do you guys compare a Kenneth Grant, a Derrick Harmon, a Walter Nolen to those guys who were available 3 years ago in what felt like a very similar draft to what we're living now?
3 years ago, D-tackle.
Chris, did you want to take that? You want me to?
I'm trying to think. 3 years ago, D-tackle, who are we talking about?
Jordan Davis was the big name. I'll look compare them to Jordan Davis, I guess. I'll look up some other names for you,
So
Chris.
Jordan Davis was a freak that year, and that was the thing. Jordan Davis was kind of the Walter Nolen of that draft, where He was big, athletic, but he had a long ways to go. Like, he wasn't like Jalen Carter, where Jalen Carter was like, oh, no, that's the guy right there. You get him. Jordan Davis was like, yo, this guy is a freak of nature, and he is going to be a problem when he puts it all together. That's where Walter Nolen is, and that's where I think he is there.
Jordan Davis, nobody expected him to go as high as he did, right? I was looking that up as Adam was talking.
I believe he was Jerry Dulac's pick for who the Steelers would ultimately go with. So
okay. But he went earlier before they could get him.
Yeah, there were people that thought he would wait a little bit later, but there were also a lot of the truthers that, like, when he tested at the combine, he just looked so freakishly athletic, and it was just like, somebody's going to want that, and it just made sense when the Eagles got him.
Devontae Wyatt was another name.
Yes, he was.
Pure defensive tackle. He went number 28, so I believe that would have been 8 picks after the Steelers, yes. There were some other defensive linemen that went after the Steelers selected as well. Jermaine Johnson, more of a defensive end. There's one other here. George Karlaftis, those guys. So I think Jordan Davis is the closest comp that we have to this situation. So if I told you got Jordan Davis at the time, I know this is going back in time a little bit, guys, but Jordan Davis at the time versus the 3 guys in this draft, how do you power rank them?
I'd go...
That's unfair, because I mean,
we're
power
3
ranked.
years later, but
Yeah.
Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Jordan Davis, Derrick Harmon, Walter Nolen.
Exactly what he said. Yeah. I mean, I find it hard to rank a guy who's been in the NFL and he's been successful.
It's
I'm
tough.
inclined to put Jordan Davis number 1.
Yeah.
I also really like the idea of Walter Nolen. Walter Nolen could flop. You know, we don't know. We don't know how his game's going to translate to the NFL. Let me ask this to both of you guys. Is there that much of a difference in quality between Derrick Harmon and Kenneth Grant? Like, there's a drop-off between Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant.
I think
right? Are we looking at fairly similar players with those two?
On my big board, Jason, I have the top 11 players, and then I have those 3 defensive tackles in order. I have Kenneth Grant, Derrick Harmon, Walter Nolen. So
no.
To me, they are all bunched together very closely. Now, there's some people that have them a little bit differently. Like some PFF has Derrick Harmon way down, like in the low first rounds. But to me, all 3 of these guys possess game-breaker potential in the middle part of a defensive line.
All right, the Patriots selection ends up being Will Campbell, so that's a tackle off the board. We're going
4 for 4, boys. 4 for 4.
So now that means that Ashton Genty will be available for the Browns.
And it looks like Jordan Schultz is reporting the Browns are taking Mason Graham at 5th overall.
Wow.
Mason Graham.
They trade back and they get a DT.
They get one of the guys at the position we're talking about that's elevated above these guys that we've just been spending so much time on. Jason, I'll throw it to you first.
Here's a suit for you, Adam. This is what I would like to see you wear.
The green with the pinstripe.
Green pinstripe with white shoes. Wow, that's a look. Sorry.
I kind of tend to like monotones for myself, but maybe I should rethink my style a little bit. Jason, your thoughts on Mason Graham, though, coming into the division, the guy the Browns trade back to get. I think it's better than having Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter or some of these. I look at those top 3 have kind of been a class of their own, but I also think Mason Graham is going to be a very solid player in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not really excited about any of them, to be quite honest with you. Abdul Carter scares me the most of the bunch, but you talk about Mason Graham, they're going to have an awful tough time running the football against the Browns. The same sort of pass rush ability. There's a reason he separated himself from the other 3 defensive tackles that Chris was talking about, sort of to feed into this, yeah.
You had something, Chris?
Oh,
no, I was trying to get attention because I need my laptop plugged in.
I'm sorry, I thought you were.
No, I've been trying to. For whatever reason, the one that I plugged into isn't working.
Okay, all right.
No, sorry, that's my bad.
No, all good. And I'm also thrown off a little bit because they're showing us. Okay, they're showing Will Campbell. I'm following.
Yeah, that was Will Campbell that got.
I'm following Adam's screen, and I'm following the TV to my right.
Yeah.
And okay, all right. So we got Will Campbell, Mason Graham.
Best offensive tackle in the draft class. Will Campbell, heck of a prospect. They need to protect Drake May. That's exactly what Mike Vrabel should have done.
No doubt. But I just didn't want to get tripped up talking about somebody that I wasn't supposed to be talking about. But no, guys, the move for the Browns. I hate to be saying this, but it's pretty darn smart.
Yeah, I agree.
That's been the biggest story of our 40 minutes together here so far, that you wind up with Mason Graham and all of the haul that they have for next year to do a lot of damage. I think it's very smart on their part.
That's the thing for me. It's the first round pick next year, the second round pick this year, and you still get the generational DT prospect. Heck of a haul there by the Browns. They went to work.
Last question I'm going to throw at you guys, and I think we're going to go to a break, possibly get Brian Batko brought in here from the Southside facility. He's pinging us on our Slack channel. Chris, are they having the same conversation about the Ravens in Cleveland that we're having here in Pittsburgh?
What do you mean?
Of you got to stop that running game if you're going to compete in this division, and you need guys like Mason Graham to do it.
I think it's possible. I mean, here's the thing: when you're in the division, you draft to get the talent that's going to counter the best people in the division, right? And right now, the Ravens, they're running all over everybody. You know, like they got Lamar Jackson, they got Derrick Henry, they got Tyler Linderbaum, they got a really good interior offensive line. It's been a big problem to stop that group, and that's what the big problem was for the Steelers. That's why I think they're going to get one of these guys. Honestly, I think Mason Graham is more of a pass rusher than a run stuffer, though. Like when I look at his tape, and so one of the things that Kenneth Grant did a lot was Kenneth Grant freed him up to do a lot of the things that he did because he was such a mauler in the middle. So Mason Graham got a lot more of the highlight plays, but I think it's going to be interesting. Mason Graham on a D line with Myles Garrett. That's two high pedigree guys that you're putting in there.
We are going to get to a break here at about the 45-minute mark. I feel like it's flown by, guys, but it's been almost an hour that we've been going at it. So we're going to take a brief break here. We're going to see if we can get Brian Batko brought in from the Southside facility, get his take on how the first round is unfolding and what the buzz is at Steelers HQ. Just a reminder, we are at Mike's Beer Bar here on the North Shore. Hundreds of local beers on tap and in cans and bottles. Steak on a stone. Come on out and see us if you haven't already. And if you're just joining us for the first time here on Draft Night, please subscribe to our channel. We're doing it 7 days a week, talking Steelers, talking all Pittsburgh sports. So subscribe to the channel. Pop a like on the stream if you're enjoying it so far. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. Help us push that view count a little bit higher. We always appreciate that. And we're going to talk to you guys on the other side of this break.
Watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prologue EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
Okay, we are back on our Steelers NFL Draft live stream at Mike's Beer Bar. I am Adam Bittner, Assistant Sports Editor for Multimedia. I'm joined by Brian Batko, who is outside the Steelers facility on the south side. Brian, you got a nice light there because it's pretty dark in the parking lot. We've been efforting the lighting since last year when you were in the dark. You look pretty good.
Thanks, Adam. My only question is, where did Carter and Jason go? Are they like slamming down beers or doing shots back there or something?
They went somewhere. They're taking a little bit of a break here, so we'll see them. I think Carter might hop back in here in a second.
Wow, working hard
Brian,
or hardly working? Why don't you get a break?
Wow, hey, I'm just the host. They're the talent, right? They're the experts, so they get a little bit of time off. Christopher Carter's to my left here, so you might be hopping back in a second. But Brian, wanted to get your thoughts on the draft so far. Obviously, the big headline as far as the Steelers are concerned is the Browns trading back, selecting Mason Graham rather than going for one of those top three, or really one of the top two that would have been available to them at number 2, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. What are your thoughts on Mason Graham being the new face in the division so far tonight?
Well, I don't know if he's going to be going head-to-head with another Mason from the Steelers for the next 5 to 10 years, Mason McCormick on the interior there. You know, it seemed like he was losing a little bit of steam with the main draft analysts, you know, from the end of the college football season until tonight, Adam. And, you know, maybe the Browns end up being more of a team and scheme fit for him than the Jags would have been at 5th overall. And, you know, nobody had him going 2nd overall, of course. So I can kind of see the vision with Myles Garrett. You know, Graham certainly doesn't look like your typical top 5 pick, especially as an interior defensive lineman. But man, you know, if he's getting one-on-ones and Myles Garrett's getting one-on-ones, or, you know, you've got to put 4 hands on one of those guys and you expect the other one to wreak havoc in the opposing backfield, maybe Cleveland's cooking with gas there.
Chris Carter's joining us once again, firing up his big board. While he's doing that, Brian, let me ask you this about the Steelers situation. One of the things we've been talking about here at the top of the show was how many mocks broke late for Shedeur Sanders. Lots of national names. I think Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com is probably the lead one. But Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus was another. Kyle Krabs of the 33rd team, all going in the direction of Shedeur Sanders. What do you make of the late break towards Shedeur Sanders in the mocks, and how meaningful it is in terms of how the Steelers are evaluating this draft?
Yeah, Adam, I have a lot of thoughts on it, honestly. Things happen pretty fast, in the 24 to 48 hours before the draft. So, one kind of thing that I keep coming back to in my brain is the national mockers are obviously not focused on the Steelers. They are not as Steelers-centric as we are at the Post-Gazette or other local outlets are. So they're trying to get as many picks right as they can in the first round, both matching team to player or player to draft slot. And, Mike Tomlin did create a lot of smoke with his Shedeur comments, I think, on Tuesday morning. But I think also, if you're trying to pick all 32, which Mr. Carter and I did earlier this week or yesterday, I guess, it does get to a point where you're like, what are the Shedeur Sanders landing spots? Especially now that there's a kind of growing sense, it seems like, from Saints beat writers that I keep tabs on, that they aren't super interested in him down in New Orleans. Now, that could change, I guess. They could be smoke screening even their own local insiders, but I don't think they had him in for a pre-draft visit. And now you're hearing from people that they might not take a quarterback at all, whether it's him or Dart. So if you're trying to put Shedeur somewhere, the Steelers probably make the most sense because of the quarterback need, all the pre-draft connection and interest links. But maybe he just doesn't go tonight, and maybe we're having a conversation like this again tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that's something I had brought up to the guys here was Daniel Jeremiah's exact explanation was, well, if he doesn't go here, I don't know where he's going to go. And to me, that's not a good enough reason to mock a guy to a team.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot. And then what happens is guys like Daniel Jeremiah, who are at the forefront of the industry, he says it, and then guys further down the pecking order start taking their cues from what Daniel Jeremiah is saying. They're all like, oh, Daniel Jeremiah's on it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to rethink my priors. I'm going to pick Shedeur Sanders now. And it seems like it becomes a snowball effect sometimes, especially as it pertains to quarterback. Because I think last year there was more disagreements nationally. I think, we were talking about Jaxson Powers Johnson, excuse me. There's a kid still to this day. I went to school with a Max Powers. I always say Max Powers Johnson. It is Jaxson Powers Johnson, but you had some on him. You had some on Graham Barton from Duke. So there was, a general sentiment around a position group, but you didn't see the coalescing around a single player that you did with Shedeur Sanders this year. Is it, to you, a snowball effect sometimes?
It could be. And also, I'll bring this up, guys. Have you discussed much so far on the stream? Where else do you think Shedeur could go, if not Pittsburgh? Because I've got one team I have in mind that I think is interesting is LA, and not
Rams, that's where I was going to go.
I was going to say not the LA with Justin Herbert, the one with the quarterback who was sort of on the fence in the earliest portion of this offseason. And the other thing about the Rams that I find kind of interesting, they have so much in place there. They have such a good culture. And I mean, no team wants to swing and miss on a quarterback in the first round. But it's almost like if anybody could, it's probably them. It's probably Sean McVay and all the other stuff they have going for them out there. And also, they don't generally do many pre-draft visits. So, in theory, if they were interested in Shedeur, they're one of the teams that probably could have kept it pretty secretive. And with Shedeur, he doesn't have an agent. So that's kind of one of the usual streams of leakage is cut off. Now, his family's running a lot of that for him. And regardless of what you think of that in general, I think if you did want to keep Shedeur in a certain team secretive, you could do it fairly easily if it were the Rams. So maybe they have zero interest in him. Maybe it's as simple as that. But I'm just spitballing here on teams that could want to make that swing if it's not Pittsburgh.
Chris, do you have anything for Brian?
So, Brian, looks like we got the Raiders taking Ashton Jeanty and the Jets taking Armand Membao, the tackle. out of Mizzou. Those are big moves in my opinion. We saw JT coming. That was kind of like the obvious one that I think a lot of people penciled in. But Membao is where I started to come off, because I thought with them taking Olu Fashanu last year, they were going to be fine at tackle. They were going to say, okay, we can pass on that for now. But them going there, that moves Tyler Warren down another pick. And now the tight end conversation does start to get interesting with him and Colston Loveland both projecting as high first-round picks. Yeah,
I mean, I didn't get those two picks right. I thought teams were, just going to be too gun-shy to go running back, inside the top 10. But I think Genty's going to be so good at the next level. And I think, to me, he and Travis Hunter are probably the two most foolproof players in this draft, and Abdul Carter kind of right behind them. Somebody at Mike's Beer Bar's got that dog in him. I hear it. I hear it out there.
Dog here. It's been here for a couple hours, so hey, it's a place for everyone.
But what I was going to say there, Chris, was Membu. Yeah, I didn't see him going this high. Jets want to protect Justin Fields, right? They got to get that the quarterback proof pocket there, and they're investing up front, doing the sort of sensible thing, if you want to call it that. I had Tyler Warren in our dueling mocks going to the Panthers to be Bryce Young's new best friend, and maybe that pick's already been leaked out there, but I'll be curious to see what they do down in Carolina.
We got another new pick in, Ted McMillan going to the Panthers.
Ted McMillan, I know he's one of your guys, Brian, going next to the Panthers.
Okay, so they do go pass catcher, but a true wideout rather than the versatile tight end Tyler Warren. McMillan's another guy who, not to the extent of Shedeur Sanders, but he had some of the anonymous scout community kind of ragging on him a little bit in the pre-draft process. I just think, you watch him play, not just last year, but the last couple years at Arizona. He's really good. High ceiling, and I think pretty decent floor with a 6'5" wide receiver who can run and has the ball skills that McMillan does. So, yeah, Carolina, they are making it a situation where Bryce Young, it's going to be, it's make or break time for you, because you've got the assets at your disposal to thrive.
Brian, I want to get your thoughts on the Steelers potentially going off the board a little bit. We've been talking so much about the quarterback, so much about the defensive tackles. There were some murmurs today about don't count out wide receiver as a position. I feel like that's been a position that you've consistently been down on. Obviously, they trade for DK Metcalf, currently have DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, that it's still going to be those two guys. Is there any universe in which you're thinking about a Mecca Egbuka, potentially a Matthew Golden, a Luther Burden still, especially if you have an eye toward Aaron Rodgers? It's something we talked about a couple times on our mock draft tracker videos. Aaron Rodgers likes to throw, probably more than the Steelers have in the last handful of years. Had over 500 pass attempts. I think the Steelers were under 400. So there should be more targets, in theory, if the Steelers finish this deal with Aaron Rodgers, to go around. Are you looking at another receiver, or are you taking it off your board?
Only a universe in which they either trade George Pickens or they're essentially telegraphing that they're going to trade George Pickens. I mean, when Kevin Colbert ran the Steelers drafts, his philosophy, and I don't even think that this is really unique to Pittsburgh, I think a lot of NFL teams probably operate this way with their front offices. Anybody picked in the third round or higher, you're expecting them to become a starter at some point. And Roman Wilson was a third round pick last year. He's had one season to prove himself and not many opportunities to do so. You'd have a glut of resources invested into that one position if you have DK Metcalf, George Pickens, first-round receiver in 2025, Roman Wilson, and a guy that I'm actually pretty high on as a role player in Calvin Austin. So I just don't see it, guys. I really don't see it. I honestly think, while we're on the subject of kind of the outside of the box ideas, as deep as this running back class is, some food for thought, a different way to look at the Steelers being on the clock here at 21 overall, assuming no trade up or trade down. Are there Derrick Harmons and Kenneth Grants and Walter Nolens in every draft? Yeah, you could probably argue that there are. You could probably argue that there are Jaxson Darts in every draft at this point as well. Now, Shedeur Sanders, I think, is kind of a unique case, but your mileage may vary there on whether, the DNA makes him a better pick or, complicates matters. But are you always going to have a draft with an Omarion Hampton from North Carolina if he's there at 21 overall, or another guy who, I had him going in the first round to the Chargers, a pick after the Steelers, but Travion Henderson from Ohio State, does he have the kind of game-breaking ability paired with a physical running style that you just don't see every year? I think those are the conversations that you need to have when you're talking about your first-round pick, and yeah, you probably need to set aside the ones that didn't pan out, a la Najee Harris a few years ago.
Jason, is there anyone, or Chris, actually, I was going to ask what you thought of some of those outside of the box guys, first in terms of how you rank them. I know you had Jahdae Barron. I think we did a short today. You like Jahdae Barron a lot.
I do.
Of some of these guys. How much are you thinking about him, even given what we've been talking about for the last hour or so with these other guys?
I think he could be the first cornerback that's not Travis Hunter that goes off the board if teams are too worried about Will Johnson's injury. I think that he's really talented. I think that Jahdae Barron's flexibility, what he does in the slot and on the outside, his playmaking skills, his speed, his change of direction, his instincts, all that translates very well to the NFL. And those are things that I think are going to look very sharp in a system. And honestly, he's one of the few players that I have that I'm like, if he falls to 21, the Steelers might need to change up their plans of going D tackle and consider going with him, because I think that he's a guy that right now you put in the slot while you have Slay and Porter on the outside, and then when Slay moves on, you could bump him to the outside, and then you could have two. If Joey Porter progresses, right, you could have two playmaker guys at the cornerback position.
Brian, any thoughts on Jahdae Barron?
I like him too, Chris, but if we keep looking at it through the prism of, okay, you want to get the kind of guy that's not going to be in every draft. I think there are generally, corners like that coming out pretty much every year. And, the Steelers, I think right away, I like the idea of, you could use him in the slot from day one. And then, maybe next year, Darius Slay is off enjoying retired life, and Barron's your number two corner. Joey and Jahdae, the J&J duo could look pretty nice there. But I kind of think that they've just got bigger needs elsewhere. And, I think comparable players, or at least players that don't have as high of a floor as Barron, but, maybe a higher ceiling than he does at this stage of the game. And one other name that I'll throw out there to kind of continue this discussion of the, off the beaten path, unlikely, but potential picks is Nick Eamon-Warry, the safety from South Carolina. You're going to have some people who say he's just a workout warrior. He dominated the combine, but he doesn't play as well as he runs a 40, jumps, and all of that. Maybe that's true, but again, if you're looking for a package that can be a game-changing player, if they put it all together, we know Mike Tomlin loves pedigree more than anything. He thinks he can coach up technique in the finer points of playing any position, and the pedigree of Eamon-Warry as a safety is almost darn near unprecedented with the numbers that he put up athletically out in Indy.
I agree there. Brian, we got another pick in here. The Saints go at number 9, and it's not Shedeur Sanders. It's Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman out of Texas. Big move there. Right.
Not Dart either.
Line. Yeah.
Ninth with New Orleans, I think, was one of the most significant picks of the night ahead of the Steelers, and not going Shedeur Sanders. And I think it's only going to ramp up that conversation of where do you go next.
I saw someone suggest today that if there's any team that should kind of kick the can down the road at quarterback, it's probably New Orleans, because their salary cap situation is so terrible that they're not going to get anything done this year. They might be the worst team in the league, especially now if it's Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, or one of the second-tier QBs in this class starting for them. And guess who's potentially in next year's draft and eligible to be? Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. So, if you just want to think of any franchise that could be playing the long game there at quarterback, the Saints are a team that it makes a lot of sense to not invest a first round, let alone top 10 pick on a guy at that position this year. And then you're kind of stuck at this time next year potentially and say, well, it's a sunk cost. We can't give up on Shedeur or Jaxson Dart just yet, even though we are in prime position to take someone who would be a fan favorite and maybe a franchise QB right away.
Brian, any final thoughts before we let you sign off, go back inside? Is there any buzz in the press room of a guy that maybe has more momentum with the local beats than maybe they do nationally?
Not really, but I mean, I do, again, just kind of get the sense that, those of us who cover the Steelers day to day, I mean, you've got your Derrick Harmon people, you've got your Walter Nolen people, you've got your Kenneth Grant people. Carter has done a savvy job of establishing himself as Harmon and Grant because he's got them trading down and taking Harmon, but also, if they don't, taking Kenneth Grant. Who's the official prediction, Chris?
It's Kenneth Grant. Again, my mock was if they had to trade back because Grant wasn't there. And so,
okay.
Yeah, I've been straight up from the jump. I think Kenneth Grant should be the guy. I predicted him for a while now, but that one mock was just my trade back mock. I'm not trying to paint both sides of the barn. I like to paint my barn red, Brian. Come on now.
Paint your barn blue if you're drafting a Michigan Wolverine.
That's true. I guess I'm painting it in blue.
Yeah. Well, the train is a coming, quite literally, and also the train is a coming at pick 21 for the Steelers. So let me know when you guys want me to hop back in and kick it around with you. Otherwise, keep it up, keep up the good work, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Thanks, Brian. Will do. Thanks for hopping on with us.
Yep.
All right, we're going to get to another break. We're going to get Jason Mackey back in here. Won't be away for too long. Just a reminder, we're at Mike's Beer Bar. Hundreds of local beers available. They got the steak on the stone. So if you're looking for a late dinner plan here at 9 o'clock, come on down, say hi to us. We'd always appreciate that. If you're enjoying the stream, please subscribe. Please like it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. We'll be back after a quick break, quicker than the last time. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere and enjoy our drone footage here in our ad break.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
back at Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for Multimedia. Post-Gazette sports columnist Jason Mackey's back with us. Took a break while we had Brian Batko in here. Jason, what are your observations of the last handful of picks? They were going slowly, now they're coming quick.
Yeah, no, I like it. Picking up speed a little bit. Surprised Colston Loveland went off the board before Tyler Warren, somebody we've talked about a lot. Chris and I were talking about off air. Chris was telling me about his testing metrics, which is fine. I'll prefer the guy who can play football, and I know that about Tyler Warren. I really liked watching him at Penn State. So that was one observation. Schedule release date, that happened while we were off the air as well. May 14th, we'll know all of the schedules.
We can start to plan our lives, Jason.
Yeah, I know. I mean, for me, it's reality. Like at the end of it, travel, logistics, all that stuff. I mean, it's the same for everybody. But so that happened. What did I miss? Help me catch up here.
I haven't missed anything. I think Chris might be catching us up. Colston Loveland is the latest that I have seen.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, what was the last pick I was on here for? Loveland was a surprise.
Yeah, Loveland is a surprise considering they have Cole Kmet.
Yes,
and like but I get getting a pass catcher to work with Caleb Williams. Oh, sorry, I thought you were giving me a message.
No, I just bumped you.
Yeah,
Tight quarters here.
But no, I think Colston Love is an interesting prospect to give to Caleb Williams. He's and like that's the thing that I was wondering here. When would the tight end start flying? Because this wide receiver class has talent, but this is not like the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type of class. Like Ted McMillan is the best receiver in this class, in my opinion. But he's not like in a normal year he might have fallen into the 20s where there was a couple superstars at the very top. So my opinion, tight end going here, very interesting, gives them another pass catcher. Now I do wonder, where does Tyler Warren go?
Yeah, and does that throw a wrench? I mean, you're getting down to 10 or so picks until the Steelers, I guess 11 at this point, until the Steelers go. So each time a guy drops down a little bit, Jason, it gives the Steelers more options of guys that they may be looking at.
I'm thinking more seriously about Shedeur Sanders, Adam. As I'm watching, I know. Boy. I don't want him to do it. I want him to take a defensive tackle and maybe trade back to do it. I'm just looking at the Saints not going quarterback.
I just realized what I was saying. The Colts are taking Tyler Warren if he falls that far.
Oh, yeah. 3 picks from now.
Yeah. It's still not right now, but I think the Colts are the prime landing spot for Tyler Warren right now if you're looking for him.
But with the Saints going Kelvin Banks Jr., I mean, a lot of people had them going quarterback.
Yeah, me
Who's
too.
going to take a quarterback between now and 21?
I don't think anyone is.
I don't have anybody.
I don't think anyone is. I mean, you look at the Niners. They got Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott with the Cowboys, Tua with the Dolphins. The Colts, if they really aren't feeling Anthony Richardson, considering he pulled himself out of a game, that would be.
But he's still young. I don't think they'd give up on him just yet.
I agree. I don't.
Not Arizona, not Cincinnati,
Nope.
not Seattle, not Tampa, not Denver.
Not Denver. He's gonna most likely he will be there at 21. But here's the thing: if he's not your best prospect, why would you take him?
Well, okay, here you're right, Chris. But look at this. Okay, not the Chargers, not the Packers, not the Vikings.
So let him fall.
Not the Texans.
If I'm
the Rams.
Why would I make you?
Not the Rams. I don't think they'd go there. Not the Ravens. Not the Lions.
I think the Rams are a sneaky quarterback pick this year because they're late in the first round. Matt Stafford is old. He's on his last couple years of his deal with them. I think they could be a sneaky quarterback pick. But I agree with you. There's not a lot of people left in the first round that I think are primed to take a quarterback in the first round other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. But here's my thing on this. If I'm Omar Khan, if I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm not letting the pressure of everyone else letting this guy fall impact my rankings. Here's if the Steelers went into their big board.
I agree, but you can take advantage of it, Chris. That's what we're saying. You could drop.
Right. You could drop back and try to get him later if you want to. But my thing is when I assemble my big board, I am not letting your decisions impact my big board other than taking players off it because you picked them. But just because you pass on a guy that I have ranked lower, if Shedeur Sanders is ranked 44 on my board, if I get to 21 and there are 30 players ahead of him that are still on my board, or 20 players, however many it would be, then I am not jumping 20 spots down my big board to get that guy just because everyone else passed on him at the quarterback position. That means I'm passing on him too, and I'm going to wait to get him where I think his proper value is in this draft class.
Yeah, but we don't know where he's at on their board.
And
we don't know if he's 45th on their board.
Yes.
Well, let me pose the question this way, gentlemen. is there, I mean, the further all of these defensive tackles and Shedeur Sanders drop, when do you begin having a conversation of rather than an or, an and? Is there a scenario, are you having conversations with teams to trade into a space where maybe you can get one of these three defensive linemen and Shedeur Sanders, especially if you feel like one or both are going to drop into day 2?
Yes, I am. I mean, if I'm Omar Khan right now, I am very seriously trying to trade down the way this draft is falling. I mean, think about the guys that we're talking about here, Adam. I mean, 3 defensive tackles, Shedeur Sanders. I mean, you could even go wide receiver. I'm just sort of pulling things at this point. Omarion Hampton as well. I mean, they have a lot of options, and we're sitting here at pick number 12 being on the clock. Like, I don't know. I'd be thinking about moving down, and if you can get something, get back into the second round, and maybe that becomes Shedeur Sanders, sure. But it's just, to me, it's a smart play given what's in front of them.
Chris, your thoughts on the and situation?
Trading back still makes a lot of sense to me. I still think that's the primary thing here is that when you're looking at the options available to you, you want that extra day 2 pick, excuse me, and you're not. I don't think that they're in the mode to trade George Pickens away. I just don't think that. I think that was something that they might have considered earlier. I think they have shut the door on that, in my opinion. So for me, now I'm looking at where can they trade back to get that extra day 2 pick. I really like the idea of trading back to the Bills or the Chiefs. The Bills have an extra 2nd round pick. The Chiefs have an extra 3rd round pick. And if you could get one of them to flip that, maybe you flip an extra 5th their way just to try to sweeten the deal for them to get that. You still stay in the 1st round while getting that extra day 2 pick, whether it's early in the 3rd, late in the 2nd. That could be where the sweet spot is to try to find your extra day 2 pick there. And listen, if Shedeur Sanders falls that far, that's where you get him. That's where you make the move and get the guy that I rank in the 40s of this draft class, just because I think that there's still a lot of really talented players there. So that's my estimation there as far as why they should be looking to trade back. But again, as Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan told us, if there is a guy, there are certain guys they have on their big board when they assemble their top 21 big board, and the guys they look at as the best 21 players in this draft class. There are guys that they will not trade out of. There are guys we are just walking to the podium and we're picking it, and we're just taking that no matter what. The question is, who are those guys?
49ers are selecting now. I'm going to filibuster till we see what I don't know. They're doing all these speeches, guys. They drive me crazy because I'm looking. It says 49ers selection.
The pick has been in for 4 minutes.
Oh, what is it?
No, I don't know
No. He's saying they said it on the TV that the pick is in.
I'm having the same issue you are. I'm looking all around to try to find what the pick is. It keeps saying it's in, and can't find the pick.
There's all these TVs here at Mike's Beer Bar, and none of them are giving us the information that we need. Not Mike's fault, just the broadcast. There's Goodell. I have a question I want to ask about the tight ends. So let me just ask it, and we'll get into whoever the pick is after that. Colston Loveland gets picked over Tyler Warren. I know we have some Penn State viewers on here, or just people that were generally interested in Tyler Warren.
Niners going Michael Williams, Georgia edge rusher.
Okay, cool. Not super pertinent to the Steelers, so I'm just going to press on.
Yeah.
Is Colston Loveland the better pure pass catcher than Tyler Warren? I mean, I think back to that 17-catch effort Warren had against USC, helped that comeback for Penn State. It was pretty much the game of the season for them. But I've still seen Colston Loveland talked about as the better pure pass catcher, and Tyler Warren is the maybe more flexible guy who you can use in some different ways as a tight end. How do you think that's playing into Tyler Warren dropping and Colston Loveland going off the board earlier than some of us might have thought? Jason,
you want me to tackle it?
No, you go ahead, Jason.
I mean, I'll be honest, I have not seen enough of Colston Loveland to compare his pass-catching abilities with Tyler Warren. I will say this, that I watched a lot of Tyler Warren this season. I would take the tight end who is versatile and as much of a chess piece as Tyler Warren is, which is unique, and I guarantee you Colston Loveland cannot do that. No, he might test off the charts. Chris was talking about this a little bit before, and maybe you have all those measurables. I'm sorry, I'm taking the guy with the football IQ, versatility, somebody you can play around with, and the pure pass-catching ability. I mean, I have a hard time believing there's a tight end who has a better feel for that position than Tyler Warren does.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think Tyler Warren, I had him as the better tight end on my board. I respect Colston Loveland. I understand the hype behind it because of his athletic build, his size, everything there. But I think Tyler Warren's the better player. I think he's a better pure tight end. I also thought that both of them would be gone. Oh no, I think that I had Colston Loveland going at 14. So if Tyler Warren's not gone by the Colts pick at 14, I will be shocked. But yeah, I look at that, and I am a little shocked there to see Loveland to go over Warren. But I did see some mocks and some people out there who were like, no, he's the better pure prospect. So I disagree with them, but clearly the NFL front offices over at Chicago disagree with me.
How does Tyler Warren's versatility play in the NFL? I think that's one of the questions I had on our Penn State preview podcast. If you're a Penn State fan, check that out. It was myself, Joel Haas. He covers Penn State for us up in Happy Valley.
We're moving fast here. The Cowboys are taking offensive guard Tyler Booker out of Alabama.
I think the offensive lineman flying off the board is good for the Steelers because it keeps
Very
those
good
options alive. But do you similar to the discussion we were having with Travis Hunter earlier, are we going to see Tyler Warren taking snaps under center or in the shotgun in the NFL? Are we going to see him used as a runner at different points in time? Are we going to see him maybe throwing a pass from time to time, or is that stuff he's only going to get away with in college the same way Travis Hunter only got away with playing two ways at the college level?
An NFL team would be wise to give him the opportunity, Adam. He was a high school quarterback. I don't think it would be outside of his skill set. I mean, if you're doing that at a major college like Penn State, I don't see why you can't at least attempt a version of it. I don't think it's going to be as disparate as it was at Penn State. I don't think you're going to see him line up and snap the ball. Didn't he do that once? Maybe not in the slot, although he did do that a lot. Look, if you're going to take Tyler Warren, it's his calling card, why are you not going to give him an opportunity to do that? I would not stick him as a traditional inline tight end. I think he would be fine with that. But I think what separates him is his ability to line up different places and do different things. I would want to take advantage of that.
Chris, Brian Batko, who just hopped off with us, does his best case scenario first-round mock draft for the Steelers of, if the board falls just perfectly for them, keeps as many options open as possible. I feel like we're pretty close to that through 12 picks.
That's a very good observation because I think they certainly are. You look at the picks right now. You still got Jahdae Barron, Tyler Warren. Granted, he's not a big target there. Will Johnson's still on the board. All three of the defensive tackles we talked about are still on the board. The two cornerbacks that I looked at are still on the board. Matthew Golden's still on the board, and Matthew Golden is to me a game breaker wide receiver. Like I think he's another guy that changes the equation there. Now I think he'll go off by 18 to the Seahawks, but this has gone very well for the Steelers. And like Tyler Booker, that's a surprise pick to me. Like a guard, he tested terribly when you looked at his athletic numbers. So I did not think the Cowboys were going to go in that direction in getting him. I thought they were going to take Matthew Golden, one of these higher up picks. I had Booker way down. And so if you're still looking at players that the Steelers don't need, who I think can still go before they pick. Mike Green, edge rusher out of Marshall. Josh Simmons, tackle out of Ohio State. Jelon Walker, linebacker out of Georgia. Shamar Stewart could be a D tackle, so he's one guy I'll stay off there. But Michael Williams is off the board. Jahad Campbell could be a pick here. Donovan Ezeraku, James Pierce. There's a lot of guys here who could still be picked ahead of the Steelers and move them down. And also, don't forget, Tyler Warren fits at tight end. He'll be gone too. This is falling very nicely for the Steelers, whether you're a D tackle person, whether you're a cornerback person, or whether you're a Shedeur Sanders person. And so
they're all there, man.
They're all there right now.
Let me ask you this question, guys. How far do you think you can trade back if you're the Steelers? So I'm going to list off the teams that pick after them and how they may or may not be threats to the conversations we're having with the defensive tackles, the conversations we're having with the quarterbacks. You've got the Chargers at 22. You've got Green Bay at 23. Obviously a big night for them hosting the draft. You've got Minnesota at 24. Houston, LA Rams, Ravens, Lions, Commanders, Bills, Chiefs, Super Bowl champion Eagles. Who, if you're the Steelers, are you most concerned with if you do trade back, being a threat to your plan and what you want to accomplish?
The Chargers, I think, could take some of their guys. I think the Packers are both those teams could take D tackles. Whenever I've done my mocks and I've looked at potential targets and things like that, those are two teams that come to mind. I think the Texans and the Vikings are safe. I think the Chargers are safe. I think the Ravens actually could also be a team that would be interested in D tackle in this draft class, as could the Lions. If you trade back, you might be looking to trade back with another team that was like, that's the thing. You got to see who wants to do something here, right? When you're trading back, you need a team that wants to get ahead of some of these other teams to get somebody. So you need trade bait, and that's where I think the Steelers are going to have to find their sweet spot here. Like if you're the Chiefs and you say, hey, we need to get another dominant offensive lineman to help Patrick Mahomes because, man, we got demolished in that Super Bowl by the Eagles front. That's got to be the move there. If that's the case, who's ahead of them that could take an offensive lineman? Maybe the Texans, maybe the Packers. I don't think that the Chargers would because they got their tackles lined up the last 2 years. It's trying to find your sweet spot partner to trade with. And I think, honestly, the Bills and the Chiefs moving up to be a little bit more aggressive, those might be the two teams that I look at the most.
I was about to say the Chiefs myself, Jason, you get to those teams that have serious aspirations, right? And I think the Bills are on that list, the Chiefs are on that list, the Lions are on that list. You're not going to talk about the Ravens, I don't think, making a trade with them. So I look at those three teams, Jason, Detroit, Buffalo, and Kansas City, and say they have the incentive to make the move. It's just a question of, do you think you're going to have enough guys fall all the way basically into the 30s?
I do. I would not worry about that in the least, Adam. That was the first thing I was thinking about when you guys were talking about that. I'd have no problem. As far down, let's say it's the Chiefs, going 31 with the number of players that they have on the board in front of them, the number of directions they can go. I mean, it depends on what the return is, of course. Like if they get a premium second-round pick, which I think that's this assumption that we're operating under, man, I would have absolutely no problem. I think you could still have one of the defensive tackles that we're talking about still on the board. You could get a very good wide receiver in that spot if you wanted. You could still go with Hampton if you wanted to address running back. I'm looking at this quarterback situation and also thinking there is absolutely zero rush to take Shedeur Sanders at this point. I'm really thinking about him in the second round, but no, I would have no problem if they wind up in that pocket 28, 29, 30, 31. As long as you're addressing second-day compensation, do it.
Relevant to that conversation, gentlemen, is Buffalo does have that 24th pick in the second round, 56 overall. So they have something the Steelers might be looking for. I think part of the problem with these teams that are really good is that they're at the end of the first round, but that means they're also at the end of the second round. So you're talking about picking in the 60s and being basically in the middle of day two. Buffalo's a little bit higher. They got that you're just barely outside the top 50 at that point. So
I could live with that. I could absolutely live with that. What's Buffalo in the first? So you're telling me you would be 30 and then 56? Yes. Those are their two picks?
Yeah.
Sign me up.
And they got 62 as well. So
they got two second-round picks.
So they're, yeah. So
the Chiefs have two third-round picks because they have the Titans third. So that's why I like those two in particular, because you got a late second, you got a mid-second to late and a late second with the Bills, and you got an early third with the Chiefs. Either one of those teams, they're both. The other thing is both of those teams are contenders right now, right? Like the Chiefs were just in the Super Bowl. The Bills are trying to get into the Super Bowl. They still haven't been. They could say, you know what? We got to be aggressive.
This is our missing piece.
Exactly. Like that's what the Steelers need. They need to drum up that interest. And as Omar Khan often talks about, when you're looking for trades, you need two teams that want to trade. So you need to see teams that want to compete with each other to get your pick, because then they're going to up each other, and that's how you get the better price.
We've got Ray Fittipaldo pinging in from the south side here. So we're gonna get him pulled in, and we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna have him on the other side, get his thoughts on this whole conversation as we're getting close to the Steelers picking. Just a reminder, we're at Mike's Beer Bar. Dozens of beers on tap in cans. Come on out, get your steak on the stone late here, get some appetizers. We're just hanging out. If you're enjoying the stream, please pop a like on it, especially if you're on YouTube. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And please subscribe. We'd love to have you along for the ride.
Real quick, Kenneth Grant is off the board to the Dolphins.
Oh, wow. All right. That is a conversation that we will tease for having Ray Fittipaldo. So stay tuned for after a quick break. We'll be right back.
and Tyler Warren.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
We're back. All right, we are back at Mike's Beer Bar. We've got Ray Fittipaldo joining us from the Southside facility. Ray, can you hear me?
I can hear you guys. How are you tonight?
We're doing great. And Ray, some news happened immediately as you were hopping in the studio here. Kenneth Grant goes to Miami, a name we've spent a lot of time talking about. We were just talking about how the draft, the board was falling pretty well for the Steelers, leaving a lot of options available. Now Grant goes off the board, so I guess I'll start by getting your immediate reaction to that.
Yeah, right around the same time that the Philadelphia Eagles took Jordan Davis a few years back. So those big nose tackles, vote. I know Mike Tomlin, the way the teams are starting to run the ball more now, you need those big guys in the middle. So I guess the watch is on. Derrick Harmon, Omarion Hampton, all those guys are in play when the Steelers pick at 21.
What are your thoughts, Ray, on the quarterback versus defensive tackle conversation? Because, it's been the big headline of the day, how many mock drafts connected Shedeur Sanders to the Steelers nationally, but locally, obviously, we're all talking about the defensive tackles. It's kind of been the way it's been from the very beginning. Are you making anything of the national smoke connecting quarterbacks to the Steelers? Or are you still having your eye on the prize here in terms of where we've been since the beginning, since you were doing 7-round mock drafts in January?
Yeah, I think the national mockers are putting, connecting the dots. I don't know that there's any solid intelligence that the Steelers are going to go Sanders there, but I will tell you, Adam, if Derrick Harmon is off the board, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Would they go Shedeur Sanders at 21? Could it be Omarion Hampton? Could it be Travion Henderson? Walter Nolen's a little bit of a wild card. I don't know if he's a great scheme fit, but he's a tremendous player. So they are going to have options at 21, but Grant going off the board certainly is going to make this a little bit different.
Yeah, that was Jerry Dulac's pick today. And then we've been ribbing Chris here because he's had basically two final mocks. He had Derrick Harmon and Kenneth Grant. You picked Derrick Harmon originally, so the guy that not originally, at different points in the process, but in your final mock, why did you like him over Kenneth Grant from a Steelers perspective? Or was it a matter of you expected him maybe to go off the board a little bit earlier than Harmon would?
Yeah, listen, I thought they would have been fine with any of those guys, Nolen or Harmon. I just think when you look at the history of this defense, going back to Aaron Smith, his successor, Hayward, it's a very important position on this defense. You have to have a really good one. And Adam, I just think if you get a guy like Harmon, have Cam Hayward be his mentor, I think it would be a great setup for the Steelers. For him to kind of, bring along his future success. So they would still have to go out and get a starting 3 technique or a nose if you want to slide T on the back over. Those are those options. But, you can easily get a nose tackle in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. I don't think that's going to be an issue. So that's why I kind of like the Harmon pick.
Jason, do you have anything for Ray?
Ray, just what do you think so far? What's been your biggest surprise?
Has Tyler Warren gone yet? Like when I came down here,
he's at the Colts.
Yep,
he's
just went to the Colts.
So I guess Loveland going before Warren was a little bit of a surprise, but that's a great pick for the Colts. I don't know who their quarterback's going to be, but they got some weapons on the outside. They got some good outside receivers, and adding Tyler Warren there is a great pick, assuming they get their QB situation figured out. So I thought Warren might be a top 10, 12 type of a guy, so maybe the fact that he's put down to the Colts is a little bit of a surprise.
Ray, did you have any reaction to the Browns trading back and ending up taking Mason Graham? Obviously, that's, I think, probably the most relevant development to the Steelers, just in terms of it's a team you're facing twice a year.
I thought it was a great haul for the Browns. To get as many in return there, I mean, they could address quarterback early in the second round now if they want to do that. That's a great haul for them. Now, Andrew Berry and his staff, they gotta make the right picks. But, yeah, you got Myles Garrett. On the outside, you add a guy like Mason Graham. Again, we just got done talking about the Colts. The Browns' quarterback situation is even worse. So, it's not like they're going to be contenders right away. But, for what they did, getting Mason Graham at 5, stockpiling those picks, I thought that was a good.
Chris, you have anything for Ray?
Ray, I think we've been talking about this D-tackle position being there. But when I'm looking at the other options here, the two corners that I've been talking about that were the guys after Travis Hunter, Will Johnson and Jahdae Barron are still there. In your opinion, if those guys are both there along with, let's say, Harmon and Nolen, do the Steelers still go D-tackle, or would you see them switch up and go corner?
Well, they did go to their pro day, so it's not like they ignored him. They brought 4 tackles. Chris, I think they did more work on tackles. I think it's the bigger need. I'm not sleeping on the need of cornerback. I understand Darius Slay is a 34-year-old rental. I get that. So it is going to be a need. I just don't think it's a need right now. I think, let's say Barron, Johnson, Harmon are on the board. I would be surprised to pick one.
Yeah, we still got the Falcons. They're going a little bit late in the clock. Some of these picks were moving pretty quickly, but it seems like they're dithering a bit here. What are their needs, Chris?
Edge rusher and D-line, my opinion. They could really – I have them going Mike Green here. I think it's interesting they're waiting this long. I wonder if they're entertaining trades right now.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that situation. They just went to break, so it's probably going to be another 2 or 3 minutes. Be hard news there unless it comes via Twitter. Ray, just any final thoughts we have from you on because I know you got to get back in there. I don't want to keep you out here too long. What are you watching for in these next 5-6 picks that's going to dictate where you think the Steelers might go?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think another team quarterback. Looks like Sanders is going to be there. And I want to see if Harmon goes off the board. If Harmon goes off the board before then, I think it's going to come down Sanders or one of the 2 running backs, Hampton, Travion Henderson. And my one wild card, and I know Chris and I talked about this on the podcast a couple of times in recent weeks since he visited, watch out for South Carolina safety Nick Emanwari. I mean, that guy is a unicorn. You don't necessarily need safety. You probably need one. But he's a freak athlete. And, they had him in here for a visit. So I would say one of those 4 guys, but the big wild card, the biggest surprise of the night, it could be Emanwari.
All right, Ray. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll let you get back in there. Maybe we'll talk to you later on in the stream. But enjoy the night down there.
All right, guys.
See you, Ray.
See you, Ray.
See you.
Okay, you're back with the 3 of us. I think it's getting down to the nitty gritty here. Every pick is going to matter.
Am I being a buzzkill by disliking the Emanwari thing? I'm sure he's a great player. It doesn't fit. They have needs. Why don't you address a need? He's a luxury pick.
Well, I think it's like Ray said, that if Harmon is off the board, I think that complicates a lot of these conversations that we've been having. And Atlanta's going very late in the clock here. I think we're into the last 30 seconds on NFL Network.
Maybe they just won't pick anybody.
They better hurry up, because if you don't pick anybody, you get passed on. And there's nothing, you don't get the pick back. I forget the last team that happened to, but there was a team that let it happen once.
I believe it was the Vikings back when it was
Pick is in.
Pick is in. It was the Vikings who did it one year back when the draft was at Radio City Music Hall. Chris Berman and the gang back when they were doing the draft. I just saw a clip recently on social media of them making fun of the Vikings. And I think they missed a couple of picks. They think they still ended up getting the guy that they wanted. But let's just go back to the Nicky Manwari thing and the whole conversation of if Derrick Harmon does go in the next 5 picks or so before the Steelers, to what degree does that change your logic? Do you really like Walter Nolen enough? Because there have been some questions on the character side. I think there's been some more questions than the other two, Kenneth Grant and Derrick Harmon, on the development side, looking at him as more of a specimen than maybe a finished product. So if it comes down to Walter Nolen versus Shedeur Sanders, or Walter Nolen versus Omarion Hampton, Jahdae Barron, these other names that we really like that are still on the board, and Nicky Manwari, how does the absence of Derrick Harmon potentially impact your view of the situation, guys? I'll start with Jason.
It doesn't for me. My view of the situation is to try to leverage that and trade down. Because what you're talking about, we're talking about 6 or 7 players that I can make an argument for any of them. They address needs to varying degrees. If I can get into the second round, I'm going to be able to cast an even wider net, address another need, and who knows, maybe Walter Nolen falls there because of some of the concerns. I don't think it's likely, mind you. Maybe Shedeur Sanders, I don't know. But I would, again, leverage the volume that they're looking at to try to trade down.
Chris, what are your thoughts on how finished a product Walter Nolen is compared to those other two guys, and you know why he's been? I think we talk about them as the big three, but I think that within that big three there was a big two, at least in terms of clearly how we were looking at it going into this draft. Everybody at the Post-Gazette picking either Harmon or Grant.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think Nolen is the lesser complete of the three, but I do think he has the highest ceiling, and that's why I had him going 11th overall, because I think that there's a lot of people that buy into that. Now, yeah, off-field concerns, whatever, all that, but when you see that man beat up on people, when he locks in, it's like, ooh, I kind of want that on my team. I want a bully. I want that mean man.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Part of his flaws, part of the knocks against him, he can tend to be over-aggressive.
Yes, and that's part of the issue.
That's a good problem to have. I'm
what
okay
what
with
does
that.
Mike Tomlin say? I'd rather say woe than sick 'em, and that's what you get.
I've got a
with Walter
defensive
Nolen.
player who's a little bit too aggressive.
Yeah. Well,
please,
Joey Porter Jr. with the pass interference call. That's stuff like that you're worried about there. But to your point, I prefer the aggression over having to train the aggression.
Right.
Also, Jalon Walker, linebacker from Georgia, off the board to the Falcons. That's along the lines. I had them going Mike Green, but yeah.
Did they need to wait all 15 minutes for that, Chris?
Right, they did not.
Adam's feeling the time.
They were probably trying to figure out who. If someone wanted to trade with them, and everyone's like, nah, we're good.
Well, I think we're still slightly ahead of schedule here. Just back
for
of the
what,
envelope.
the 10:38?
Yes. Brian Batko tweeted out it was 10:38 last year when the Steelers went with Troy Fautanu. So that was kind of the over/under with them drafting in similar position this year. We still got another almost 50 minutes to go in that case. So I do think we're going to get a Steelers pick a little bit earlier if we don't get any more ditherers like the Atlanta Falcons. I love the word dither, by the way.
That's
Jason.
the second dither we've had
tonight.
tonight.
I just gotta slip it in there. It's a fun word to say, so I figured I'd try it again.
Hey, so while we're talking about lighter stuff, did you guys see the J.J. Watt tweet?
I did not.
Did we really just have an announcement for the schedule announcement?
Yeah.
I like that. Good job, J.J.
Well, I mean.
Oh, Andy tweeted about Culver's. Oh man, very nice. Culver's, good place. We don't have them here, but you have them in Florida.
It's true, and you
good
love
Bradenton dinner.
Yeah, I was about to say all roads lead to Bradenton.
Yes, it
for
does.
Jason Mackey. I believe I saw in the chat the Pirates are up 2-0, going for the sweep of the LA Angels in my old stomping grounds of Orange County. So, shout out to that game ongoing. That messed up my flow, though. I don't know where to go from here, Jason. No, I got to slip the casual moments in here. Some references to what's going on. Let's look at the order a little bit. and talk about some of these teams directly ahead. I think the team that sticks out, Chris, next to me in this order is the Bengals at 17, or excuse me, I think I'm looking at round 2. The Bengals are coming up soon, right? Yeah, they're at 17 in the first round as well. What do they need? What direction do you think that they might go here, a few picks ahead of the Steelers?
They could go D-tackle. They were a potential landing spot for Kenneth Grant. But I think the Bengals need to shorten this offensive line. They have had Joe Burrow for 5 seasons, and they've made the playoffs twice. Let's be real about that.
Not defense, Chris.
Their
defense stunk.
Their defense stinks, and I get that. But the big reason why they can't finish the season with Joe Burrow most of the time is because he's under siege and their offensive line stinks. And so they could go. I'm not against them going defense. I'm just saying.
They lost Hendrickson, right? Sorry to cut you off again.
So he's technically still there, but he's not happy and he wants to go somewhere else. So that's very much up in the air. So I hear the defense, and I think it would be smart for them to go either, but it's offensive line or defensive line for me if I'm the Bengals.
Oh, if the Bengals take one of our guys,
that'd be tough. They've done it before. They did it with what was his name? William. William. I forget his name. Cornerback in 2016 that they had.
William Jackson.
Thank you. William Jackson picked him right before the
From
Steelers.
Houston.
I forget what college. But he was the cornerback the Steelers were rumored to want, and then they went with Artie Burns, and boy, did that not work out.
William Jackson III from Houston.
There you go. Way to go.
Will Johnson's a name that's come up at different points in the process. So we've been talking about cornerbacks. I think a lot of us have kind of more trained our attention on Jahdae Barron. But Will Johnson started off this process as maybe a top 10 pick in terms of how he was valued, at least outside the league. Was very disruptive at Michigan, had a lot of pick sixes, a lot of interceptions, had those ball skills that the Steelers love and that Joey Porter has not necessarily displayed in his first couple of seasons. Give me your thoughts on Will Johnson. I'll start with Jason as a potential wild card here. I like him as a prospect. I don't know if I like him more than these other guys, but we have to have that conversation, I think, at this stage.
I understand he's one of a group that I keep talking about and hammering. I don't think he was in for a visit, if memory serves.
Who are we talking about?
Will Johnson from Michigan.
No, he was not. He was not a visit. But they did talk to him at the Combine, and Terrell Austin was at his pro day.
Okay.
And I think the only reason they missed his pro day is because that was when Aaron Rodgers came in.
Oh, that's right, when they met with them the night before. Okay, thank you. I like him. I don't love using I feel like I'm fairly consistent in saying I want somebody from this draft to impact the team in 2025. Right now with Darius Slay, Joey Porter Jr., I'm not sure. Will Johnson would obviously play, but I'm not sure you're maximizing what you're getting out of this draft. And for that reason, I don't necessarily like it. Chris, just looking at your board, I mean, you have him 2 spots ahead of Derrick Harmon and 3 spots ahead of Walter Nolen. I would much rather have Harmon just because I think you can immediately.
I think
Walter Nolen just went.
Walter Nolen to the Cardinals.
So
that's higher than a lot of people thought.
That is a big name off the board for the Steelers. So we're going from what pick were we at?
That
10
was
or
16.
11. And we were at 10 or 11 saying everything's. I think we've gone as far as 12, and we said things are going well for the Steelers.
All right, we're going to stop talking about that then.
Yeah.
Different topic again. Things are going terribly for the Steelers.
Okay, so it's down to Derrick Harmon in terms of guys that might be available to the Steelers. Do we now need to have the trade-up conversation at all?
No,
I think
you
we
do
both
not
said
trade
it was
up.
Unlikely, but just
you
give
do
me your
not
thoughts
trade
on
up
that.
under any circumstance.
So if Walter Nolen goes to Cincinnati if Derrick Harmon goes to Cincinnati, for example, you're still comfortable with what's available, that you don't feel the need to jump up ahead and get that guy.
If they didn't trade away the second-round pick, sure. I think right now their move needs to be keep waiting, wait till 21. If Harmon falls to you, great. If not, you'll probably get a shot at Barron or Johnson. Either would be really good starting quarterback talent. I think those would be great options for you. If not, trade back, get that day two pick back in your pocket, and then you can still get a shot at Darius Alexander, who's a late first-round pick that I have slotted. That would be good. They brought him in for a top 30. I like him, but I didn't like him as much as that other tier of defensive tackles.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. No way am I trading up. Just no way. It's too compromising. I'm still looking at. I know we sort of fixated on the defensive tackle, and I'm still adamant about wanting a defensive tackle if it's there. I'm not going to force it, and I feel like trading up would be forcing it, Adam. I don't want to give up more mid-round assets than they've already given up.
It is too late to trade up ahead of Cincinnati if you're fearful of them going defensive tackle, as Chris mentioned. So, that ship has sailed as far as the Bengals go. Let me ask you these questions, and there's only 3 teams remaining between the Steelers and the Bengals who are on the clock right now. It's Seattle at 18, Tampa Bay at 19, Denver at 20. I've seen Omarion Hampton connected to Denver a ton in my mock drafts. They have a lot of needs. So do you look at Seattle or Tampa Bay if Derrick Harmon slips past Cincinnati? Do you look at them as threats to what the Steelers might want to do here?
I don't think Denver. I don't think Seattle. I think Seattle's going with a Matthew Golden type of player.
Jason, anyone worrying you?
No, they're not. I mean,
Buccaneers should be fine at D-tackle because they got Kalijah Kancey, the pit man, who's taking over everything over there.
Denver's defense was solid.
Yeah.
Seattle.
I think really it's the Bengals right now. That's the big one.
Yeah.
Yes,
and they would want more of a traditional edge, I would feel like. Maybe we get lucky. Maybe they end up taking that offensive lineman. Is it too late, though? Is it too – seriously.
Josh Simmons would be a really good pick for them right now.
The pick is
in. So, yes, it is too late. Okay.
So, it is, it's completely too late. So, I feel like we're waiting with bated breath now, really filibustering. You brought up Darius Alexander, Chris.
Yeah.
What do you like about the package that he's presenting, as a potential option for the Steelers compared to those top 3? Why didn't you like him as much as you mentioned?
I think he wasn't as complete of a prospect. His size and athleticism, though, tests great. And you look at the size of his hands, his ability to make plays. Heck, if you're a Pitt fan, you saw that man do a pick 6 on you in the bowl game. Like a DT moving as well as he did, that was just highly impressive. So I look at that, and I think that's where it would be really impressive to get a guy like that. He'd be an athlete. But, again, I would trade back for Darius Alexander if Harmon is gone.
It was the Ticket City Game Above Sports, Frosted Flakes, Sun Bowl, or what was it? It was
whatever. Game Above Sports Bowl. Who cares?
Yeah. So
all the random names.
We got here's a question about Darius Alexander. Though we know the Steelers are not huge fans of Group of 5 teams. They almost always go for Power 5. Increasingly, they've really turned their eyes toward the Big Ten and the SEC. If we're going to have a conversation about Darius Alexander briefly as we wait for the Bengals.
Shamar Stewart to the Bengals.
Oh, there it is. All right, let's pivot there.
Derrick Harmon it is.
Well, Shamar Stewart, I feel like we can get a little meat off that bone. Shamar Stewart's the guy who came up loosely on the periphery of this conversation, struggled in terms of finishing. I think only had 3.5 sacks in his college career, but he did generate a decent amount of overall pressure. Why do you think the Bengals go that direction ahead of Derrick Harmon if they wanted to improve their defensive line?
Sorry,
more of a traditional, more of a traditional pass rusher. I'd imagine.
He's an edge rusher. He's an edge rusher who can play defensive tackle. You can move him around. Also, when we talk about athletic freaks, this guy is an athletic freak. Like super strong, long, athletic, fast, explosive. So if you guys know about relative athletic scores, where it measures all your stuff and it compares you to everyone in your class at your position, he is a perfect 10 out of 10 at that position, and that's where Shamar Stewart definitely worth it. He was a guy that I did have the Steelers potentially interested in, but I think for the Steelers, you want that beat him up in the middle defensive tackle, and he's not that. He's a much better DeMarvin Leal.
He's 267.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't drop him at nose.
No, you can't, and that's the thing. But he's a guy that you can flex around a little bit. I still think you would that would not be the ideal situation, which is why I didn't have them going there.
Yeah, I mean, if at least for the Steelers, like if you have Alex Highsmith and T.J. Watt here, you're not going to use Shamar Stewart all that much. I understand why the Bengals would want that. I think that pick makes a lot of sense for the Bengals. I think it benefits the Steelers just because it keeps Derrick Harmon off the board. I'm not surprised at all, guys, to see the Bengals going defense. That defense was atrocious last season. And
it got worse.
Yeah, and it got worse. I feel like it's kind of the pot calling the kettle black a little bit with the Steelers situation, but I like Shamar Stewart as a player. I just don't see him as a better option than a defensive lineman.
Yeah, I guess
I agree.
Let's pivot the conversation at least briefly, less to like the impact on the Steelers in terms of who they might pick, and more to the impact of this is a guy they might be seeing for the next 5 years. Trey Hendrickson was obviously a huge problem for the Steelers for a long time. He left in free agency this year, so you have Shedeur Stewart coming in. How does he compare? Can he be, I don't want to say the same player as Trey Hendrickson, but can he be a guy that the Steelers are going to fear in a somewhat similar way?
Jordan Schultz says the Seahawks are interested in trading down. That'll be very interesting.
Yeah, interesting to see there. But yeah, let's get back to Shedeur Stewart. Jason, your interest level in seeing him in the division.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have a strong opinion either way. I mean, he's there. It's going to, I guess what it tells me is so far in this draft, we've seen the Browns get better and the Bengals get better. The Steelers, it's going to be up to them to get better. I don't expect a team like Cincinnati to have as bad of a defense as they've had. I mean, it means the Steelers are going to have to account for Shedeur Stewart. I also can't say that I'm going to want them to script an entire game plan to stay away from his side of the field. We're a long way from that. So, I don't know. Can we just get to the Steelers pick already?
Yeah, it's getting to that excruciating moment where I feel like we've asked all the questions we can ask, and you just got to get on the clock here.
Here, I want to talk about something. Why haven't we discussed Jaxson Dart?
Yeah, we've
because he's not good. Because he's not good.
Okay, all right, but I mean, we have not discussed this one bit.
You know how far down I said Shedeur is? Push him way further down.
You did not. Was he the one you didn't have in your top 100?
I made a mistake. I said that the other day. He was in my top 100, but he's like in like the 80s.
But I thought he was a first-round pick. I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying I
some
was
people see him that way.
For,
I do not. I don't see it. I don't see it with him. He's not. That would be a reach of all reaches to pick Jaxson Dart, in my opinion.
But guys, we're talking about quarterback sliding. I mean, the Steelers may take a quarterback. The Rams may take a quarterback. Other than that, nobody's taking a quarterback. So Jaxson Dart is probably a second-round pick along with Shedeur Sanders, unless the Steelers do something. I would be surprised if they went with Dart over Sanders.
The other option here, if the Seahawks are talking about trading down, someone's trading up. Maybe that's one of those teams thinking the Steelers will go quarterback. Maybe it's the Browns, the Giants. They go get their quarterback by trading up with the Seahawks.
That'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Yeah, we're really down to the nitty-gritty here. Let's take some viewer comments and questions. See what you guys are talking about. How would you like Shedeur Sanders fit with the LA Rams? Bearded Dutchman bringing that up in the comments.
Shedeur Sanders at the Rams?
Yeah.
I like it. I think he's got a personality that would fit there. I think
he wouldn't have to start
right away. He wouldn't have to start right away.
Perfect.
He's got weapons around him. It's a pretty good team out there. Yeah, I mean, as far as fits for Shedeur, man, I like it, but at the same time, if I'm the Rams and how their team is constituted and what they're looking at doing, I don't think that Sanders makes a lot of sense for them. Again, you can try to get the successor to Matthew Stafford, but I don't know, man. I feel like they've got another run. They're going to. You don't bring a guy like Matthew Stafford back unless you feel like making a run, and you're going to try to gear up to do that. In which case, they have a lot of other places that they can add. Maybe wide receiver. Honestly, try to get Stafford another weapon. Maybe try to fortify the defense. So I mean, I like it if I'm Shedeur Sanders, but I don't know if I like it as much from a Rams perspective. The Seahawks pick is in.
The Seahawks don't trade back. Both Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz weren't fighting in a coffee shop. They were saying that the Seahawks.
That's a good one, Chris.
Oh, geez,
good one.
That was such a story. I actually had a friend that was there in that Starbucks when they got into it. It was pretty crazy. But the Seahawks were interested in trading back. Supposedly, so are the Buccaneers. I think both of them are trying to see, will someone jump up for a quarterback? And will they give them an extra day 2 pick of some sort? That's going to be interesting to see what happens here.
But I bet you a lot of teams are interested in trading back at this point. I mean, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who would be interested in trading up. Somebody that's trying to get a specific player. Sorry, Chris.
No, you're fine. Matthew Golden would be my pick here if I'm the Seahawks. But I've been sliding them into him to them for a while. But we'll see what happens here.
What is Aaron Rodgers thinking as he's watching the action so far tonight? And
Adam,
I would listen.
He's not watching the draft.
He's probably in a dark room
There is
somewhere,
there's no way Aaron Rodgers watching the draft. None.
Well, when he comes out of the dark room tomorrow morning and sees that these quarterbacks have been falling, I think there was a lot of conversation at different points of how volatile.
Gray Zabel, offensive lineman, center/guard, goes to the Seahawks. They get O-line there. That's a patch for the Steelers. It's not a guy that I had them being interested in.
2 picks away.
Yippers.
But in terms of Aaron Rodgers, there was talk about how volatile the Sanders and Aaron Rodgers mix could be. But I think as you're seeing the Sanders fall materialize in real time, I can't imagine that even if the Steelers went that direction, it would have any impact on the Aaron Rodgers conversation that we've been having for weeks now.
No, I just think it's a waste. I think it's a waste to not use that pick. I mean, it's the same strand of logic that we're applying to the Los Angeles Rams, that if you bring back Matthew Stafford, what you're telling your team, what you're telling your fan base is that now is important. If the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers, what they're telling us is now is important. And if now is important, get a pick that helps you now. We can have a debate inside of that on who that is. I can understand a lot of things. I mean, Chris tweeted out something a few minutes ago, Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, Derrick Harmon, Matthew Golden, Omarion Hampton.
Yep.
You can make an argument for every one of those guys and why they make a bunch of sense for the Steelers.
Yep.
What you can't do is tell me if you're going to sign Aaron Rodgers that you're also going to sign Shedeur Sanders. You're not of a first-round pick. You've lost your second-round pick. You're not going to trade back, and so you're not going to get a second-round pick. I just don't like that from a team-building perspective. It's the same thing I said an hour ago. And I would probably disagree with Chris, respectfully, of course, that I would rather have somebody like Derrick Harmon who addresses an immediate need, something I do not have with my team right now. I mean, I guess you have it in Cam Hayward. You need it on the other side.
No, but one, you need another presence. You saw what happened when Larry Ogunjobi was that guy. He got bullied off the line. You need another D tackle to help that's going to be a force in the middle. You also need your next Cam Hayward. Hayward's only going to be like this for another season, maybe 2. So, you need to get that guy. And Harmon, I talked to that man at the Combine. Out of the 3 D tackles that I talked to, I thought he spoke the best. I thought he was the most composed. I thought Kenneth Grant was fine. I thought Walter Nolen, there was a reason why I put him as a third of that group. That was part of the why, was just the feels I've gotten from him talking to him. Derrick Harmon really impressed me at the podium. He has the potential to not just be Cam Hayward on the field, but I think off the field well as a leader.
Well, and let's also remember this. We're kind of talking up the run, the need to stop the run for the Steelers, which is real. They also need to rush the passer better than they did last season. We haven't talked about that at all. I want to say it's their fewest sacks since 2016, something like that.
Yes, it is.
Like, an improved pass rush is necessary.
And
it's
Derrick
not
Harmon
just about
gets after
stopping
the
the run.
quarterback.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I understand what you're saying with Kenneth Grant. I mean, it's a moot point now because he's off the board.
Right.
But to me, I'm going Derrick Hampton as long as I feel like they can do that.
Gentlemen, are you surprised at all by the relative lack of trades? We had the blockbuster at the start with the Browns moving down.
Yeah, same.
Well, I think there were 2 schools of thought going into this draft of every team had its first-round pick, which is somewhat of a rarity. Usually there's a little bit more of a shuffled order, but now because every team had 1 first-round pick, there was a sense by some that there wouldn't be as much action. We have seen that played out, but Chris and Jason, you guys both said that you're surprised. So I'll start with Jason. Why are you surprised at this point?
Well, because, I mean, you normally see teams trading up and eager to get somebody. We normally see a lot more action on a night like this. And I have a couple theories on why, because I feel like the talent, it's not as
Buccaneers
much
pick
clustered
is
at
in.
the top. Do we know who it is?
Not yet. Working on that.
It's not as much clustered at the top. It's a little bit more widespread, and I think teams are in their spot feeling like they can get a player that they really like. I also think we've seen the evolution of how aggressively teams scout players, how much intel is gleaned, and I feel like teams can almost talk themselves into seeing this player. He's a fit. We know this player, that player. Like the way teams attack the draft anymore, you almost get married into this is our spot, these are our guys, we don't feel like we have to move because it costs too much, if that makes sense.
Well, and what we've been talking about is you need a team to want to trade up, and I think I went into the night thinking I really did think the Steelers were going to trade back. I thought they were going to have plenty of options.
Here's
I
another.
just don't know if they're going to have a partner.
Here's another thought to this, guys. My top 5 here: Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, Derrick Harmon. Well, Alton one's off the board. I just did a new top 5. This is my old top 5. If I've got Barron, Johnson, Harmon, Golden, Hampton, and I like all 5 of those guys, and I think those. Maybe you trade back. Maybe you say, you know what, one of these guys is going to be there. I think that those are 2 generational corners. Derrick Harmon might D tackle. Matthew Golden's an electric wide receiver, and Omarion Hampton is a playmaker running back that would revolutionize the run game. Maybe you say, hey, you trade back 4 or 5 spots, and most likely one of those 5 are going to be there anyway.
But aren't other teams that are
knowing
other
that.
teams having that same conversation? Hey, maybe we can trade back. We're certainly not going to trade forward. Are they having the same logic we said before? We said there's no way that Steelers are trading up. How many teams do you think are in that category? How many guys doing live streams around the country are making that same argument for their teams that they cover?
Emeka Egbuka is off the board to the Bucs.
Thank you. There we go. Emeka Egbuka. So I'd have Omarion Hampton going here to the Broncos, and then it's go time.
Yeah, I think Omarion, that's one of the picks I saw most consistently for Denver was Omarion Hampton, as they have that needed running back. Is there anyone else you can imagine them going in that direction? Actually, hold on. Let's bring Paul Zeise into this conversation. He is off stage. Let's bring him in. Paul, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too.
I can hear you, Paul. What are your thoughts on we're 2 picks away from the Steelers, really just 1, so it's going to be happening fast and furious here.
Well, unless who was the last pick? Unless it was a quarterback, the Steelers are going to be in a really interesting spot, aren't they? Where they're basically, we're going to find out who was lying, who had good information, and all that other stuff, because I think all 3 of the quarterbacks they've been linked to, Jalen Milroe, Jaxson Dart, and Shedeur Sanders, are all going to be on the board when they pick. And so I didn't think that was going to be the case. I'll be honest, I'm very, very shocked that both Milroe and Sanders are still on the clock. But at the end of the day, the Steelers, we've heard a lot of different people say a lot of different things about how, well, you know, the Steelers are going to take a quarterback. There's no question they're going to take a quarterback and all that other good stuff. You know what? We're going to find out if people have good information or if
they're
they've
going
just
with
been
Derrick.
basically.
Hey guys, I gotta stop you right now. They're going with Derrick Harmon. Source it. Derrick Harmon is going to the Steelers.
Derrick Harmon is going to the Steelers, which means all of the stuff about quarterbacks have been basically a big smokescreen, because all 3 of the guys that they talked about are still on the board.
True, but I think the conversation we've been having before you hopped on, Paul, is I think we all view these guys as no better than second-round picks, and it's clearly that's the way they're being valued. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm with you, Paul. So many people have been hyping up this Shedeur Sanders thing and have been telling me I'm an idiot for saying that he's going to fall. And I've been saying he ain't the first-round talent that you think he is. Derrick Harmon has the chance to be the next Chris Jones, Cam Hayward. You take that type of a guy over a quarterback who projects to be maybe a backup who turns into Geno Smith in 5 years. It's right there. And after all the stuff we've heard for months, we've been saying D tackle, all the smoke screens. It was a smoke screen. I said it from the jump. Why didn't people believe me? Why don't they believe me every year? I said, tackle last year. People told me it's center. It was tackle. Come on now.
I believed you, Chris. I believed you.
Well, here's the thing. I don't have a problem with them taking a defensive tackle. I said in this first round they needed to get either a quarterback, a cornerback, or a defensive tackle. So if you're telling me they're going to go defensive tackle, I think that's pretty good. I mean, I think that's a position. If you think about it, Cam Hayward probably has 1 year, maybe another year. They need to continue to start to build their defensive line again. Because listen, Chris will tell you, I mean, you've been around football for a long time, Chris. How many defenses have you ever been around that were great defenses that didn't have a great defensive line?
Not very many.
Jason, your thoughts?
Not very many at all.
I completely agree with Paul. To me, I said this from the very beginning. This is an extremely easy pick. He's on the board. Make it Derrick Harmon, addresses your biggest need. He's a successor to Cam Hayward. I'm not interested in taking Shedeur Sanders or Jaxson Dart. The Steelers did the thing, man. Good.
But here's the other part of it. Here's the other part of it. Here's the other part of it, Chris, and, Jason, Chris, whatever. I mean, the Steelers could legitimately still, trade into the second round and take one of those three guys, because I think all three of them might still be on the board in the second round.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm expecting, and that's why, to me, it made the most sense, because, people always say, oh, you draft the best, or at least the teams always say, oh, we're gonna draft the number one player on our board, and we know that that's usually not true. They look at need as much as we do, despite the fact that they might try to throw us off the scent, despite the fact they kind of act aloof about it. They know what their needs are, and we've known this has been a need for some time. But yeah, I think it's a huge win for the local beat guys. This is something we've been talking about for weeks. Almost to the point that I barely.
For what?
The local beat, compared to the national, because that's how we started the night. We talked about
the people going there every day and doing the work and actually know people, and they don't just helicopter in and take something and then move on to the next thing. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's why you should follow local beat reporters who bust their what covering teams. Yes.
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest things about it is, we've heard so much about quarterback, but I, honestly, and this is probably a sore subject with some people, but I honestly think they learned something from the Kenny Pickett thing a couple of years ago, where they probably drafted a guy earlier than they probably needed to. They could have waited probably to the second round, maybe even the third round, and still got Kenny Pickett. And I think that when they graded all of these guys, I don't know that any of these guys should have been graded except for Cam Ward as a surefire lock first rounder. And that includes Shedeur Sanders. Listen, I want to make this very, very clear, okay? Because Shedeur Sanders is the only guy you're not allowed to criticize. I'm going to make this very clear. Chris, you know this. Adam, you know this.
Yep.
I'm the most diehard Florida State fan on the planet. And the reason I am is because when I was growing up or whatever, the guy that was my absolute favorite player and still is one of my three favorite players of all time in any sport is Deion Sanders. I love Deion Sanders. And I love, everything about it. I have no problem with, the way that he went to Colorado and he jump-started that program. But at the end of the day, I think there's a lot more sizzle than steak with Shedeur Sanders. And I think he's the kind of guy that probably, if he wasn't Shedeur Sanders, he wouldn't get as criticized as much as he is, but he probably wouldn't get as much credit as he does. And I think if you look at him, he's probably a third-round quarterback that someone's probably going to take in the second round because they panic and think they need a quarterback.
Let's pivot into talking about what this
we don't
means.
know who the Broncos took yet, right?
We don't. They say the pick is in, so we'll keep an eye on that.
Yep.
But let's pivot to what is the immediate impact? How quickly is Derrick Harmon going to be, what we imagine him to be? You think he's a day one starter for this team, Chris?
In the sense that when they run out with their shotgun their nickel formation, you'd probably still have Benton and Hayward in with him, in before him. But in today's NFL, the third defensive tackle is basically a starter. It's like the sixth man off the bench. Like, they're going to see a ton of minutes, So that's where I think that there's going to be he's going to be very useful. And again, he's built like Cam Hayward, so he's going to be able to learn behind Cam Hayward, but he's going to see a ton of snaps this year, regardless of injuries or anything like that. I think this is a very good move for the Steelers. And again, when I talked to this guy, he just spoke the right way. He talked about how he studied. He studied Cam Hayward, Chris Jones. He said he's been studying theirs to get more of their moves into his game because they are his guys. So, yeah.
Let me throw a fly in the ointment.
Well, it's funny.
I'm just going to ask Jason this question, then we'll get to you, Paul. I'm going to throw the fly in the ointment of all these guys that they've taken early this last couple of years. We've talked about them as being day one starters, but they haven't followed through with that. Mike Tomlin has really gone out of his way to slow play these guys. Done it to different degrees. Ultimately, Troy Fauteuil, who got in there early before getting hurt, waited a little bit longer with Broderick Jones and Joey Porter Jr. regardless of whether we think he's talented enough to step right in, how do you think the Steelers are going to handle this?
Oh, I think they're going to let him go. I mean, I think it's a different era. I think it has changed. I think based on what Chris has said, what I've seen, what I've read, what I've heard about Harmon, I don't think he's going to have any problem showing he's ready to take on that responsibility. I think the Steelers are in a serious position, as we've been talking about all night, a position of need. They need him to step in right away. So, I mean, unless there's something unforeseen that I don't know, doesn't pick up the NFL game or is getting physically outmatched, I don't see why you don't have him there. I mean, what are they going to do? Put Isaiah Loudermilk in there instead, DeMarvin Leal? Like, come on. This is what they've lacked. They finally made the pick. I like
Dan
how
Moore
they're
there.
What's that?
We talked about Dan Moore for a lot longer than we thought we would. That's just the only thing that I throw up some level of caution about is, Jahdae Barron goes to
My
the Broncos.
God. Patrick Surtain and Jahdae Barron and Damari Mathis, the pit man. That secondary is going to be terrifying.
Go ahead, Paul. Let's get your thoughts on
Well,
this.
what I was going to say was, we've talked a lot, and I know I have on my podcast, and I know I've listened to Chris and Brian and Ray and everybody else. I mean, defensive tackle is a need for this team. And so I think the biggest thing about it is when you get a guy like him, he's the kind of guy you hope that you're going to have for 10 years. And you don't have to revisit, this much before, much after this. It sounds to me, I've read all the scouting reports because, again, in my preparation for this draft, I read scouting reports on quarterbacks, which I was very underwhelmed by the way. I read cornerbacks, which there were some really intriguing guys to me at corner, and defensive tackles. And I think the biggest thing about it is, if you're the Steelers, you probably looked at the value of the quarterbacks versus the defensive tackles, and you said, you know what? We really believe that this guy is a guy that he can be with us for 10 years. Shedeur Sanders could be a guy who flames out after a year or two. Jaxson Dart, Jalen Milroe. There's a lot of questions about these guys. When you pick first, your first-round pick has to be somebody that you really believe is going to play and start for a long, long time.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten away from that conversation as much. They cheer in Mike Spearbar going up as the Steelers are on the clock. Everyone's seeing the terrible towels in Green Bay. But yeah, sometimes I feel like we go down the rabbit hole of what does this team need now, as opposed to what does it mean over the long run. And we know how important Cam Hayward has been for such a long time, and now you're going to have possibly another guy in that mold. And that matters too, not just the short term, not just what's relevant to this year, but what's relevant in the long run. You had something, Chris?
No, I was just conversing with someone else.
Yeah, no, so I'll just finish that soliloquy and say, it's not just about 2025, it's about possibly 2035. I haven't really thought about that as a year much, Jason, but it is, that's part of the conversation too, is having a cornerstone to build around. If he becomes the next Cam Hayward for this team, as he's been labeled throughout this process, as he has himself identified Cam Hayward as a guy he models his game after, that's important for the long run and not just for this year.
Is that Jaxson Dart on our screen? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
glad they did it.
Look at that fit. It's like a 90 almost.
My man looks sauced.
He does. His hands like shaking.
And his eyes were low. Like,
see, that's why you don't take him. Derrick
Well,
Harmon.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you go down this sort of rabbit hole, right? The Chargers are next. They've got a guy by the name of Herbert. Green Bay is next. They've got a guy by the name of what's his name? Jordan Love. The Vikings have J.J. McCarthy. The Texans have C.J. Stroud. Let's see. The Rams now have Matthew Stafford. Maybe that's a place where maybe they go for a quarterback. The Ravens obviously have a guy by the name of Jackson. Detroit has Goff.
Jared Goff.
Washington has Jaden Daniels. Buffalo has Josh Allen. The bottom line is, I mean, if the Rams don't take a quarterback, I mean, is it true? Honestly, I mean, if you think about it, Chris, you obviously follow it closer than us. But is it possible that all three of the quarterbacks, Milroe, Dart, and Sanders, slide into the second round?
The question, guys, is it possible all three quarterbacks going to day 2 is on the board? I apologize, Paul. I got a little loud here in the bar because the Steelers pick is official. It is Derrick Harmon. You heard it here first from Christopher Carter, 10 minutes ago?
12 minutes ago.
12 minutes ago.
But who's counting?
But the question from Paul is, all three of those quarterbacks falling potentially into the second round. I guess I'll add my sub-question to that is how much pressure, if they do fall into the second round, is going to be on the Steelers to move back in to possibly look at those guys.
The only thing is that now moving back into the second round without trading back in the first is very tough. The only way that happens now is if you trade away probably a player or a future pick. And I just don't see either being likely unless you're giving up George Pickens. And from what I've heard, they do not want to do that anymore.
No, and not to get a quarterback, too. Like, if you're going to trade away George Pickens, it would theoretically be to draft a wide receiver either in the first or second round, have somebody around for the next 4 years. I don't like that option. I mean, at this point, I'll just let the quarterbacks go. They don't have to draft a quarterback. That was a fictitious creation anyway.
Exactly. It was a smoke screen. It was always a smoke screen.
Well,
I'm hyped.
You're good, man. I mean, and whether anybody likes the Aaron Rodgers thing or not, it's real. It's what they're doing. They want to sign Aaron Rodgers. So you have Aaron Rodgers, you have Mason Rudolph. Your quarterback's probably going to come in 2026 in all likelihood, and you're building the team around him. Like that's what they've been telling us. Let's listen.
Or, and I'll just go throw this
Well,
out
I mean,
there.
I think it comes down to this. Honestly, it comes down to this. They didn't grade any of these guys as first rounders, and they probably learned their lesson with the Kenny Pickett thing. So, you know, I think if any of these guys were going to be like guys they thought, wait, man, these are our quarterback. This guy's the quarterback of our future. They would have taken him. So I just think that basically at the end of the day, they didn't rate any of these. They didn't grade any of these guys. They didn't rate any of these guys as first rounders.
Well, and I think it's also, listen, if we're going to compare to that 2022 draft and Kenny Pickett and how that ended up going, those guys didn't fall to the second round. They fell to the third. Matt Corral, Malik Willis, Sam Howell, they were all available, deep into day 2. So, I think you can't even rule out the possibility that those, at least one of those guys is available when you get to 83, or at least maybe you have the ability to move up in the third round. I'm not convinced, because when we started this process, I think you talked about Jaxson Dart as a third rounder. Then, I don't know, whoever his agents were got in some prominent insiders' ears, and he jumped up. I saw him go as high as number 3 in some mock drafts at times, and that was wild. But his starting point was a third round pick, Chris.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, like, I've said all along, this is what happens when big things are happening and serious things are on the line. Pressure creates mistakes. People start to overreact. People start to think too fast, and that's when you start and you make mistakes. And the key is to stay calm, stick to what your guns are, be strong in your fundamentals and what you've been thinking, what you've been saying, what you've been studying. What I've been saying and studying for months was that the Steelers really loved this D-tackle class. They really loved Derrick Harmon. They really liked Kenneth Grant as well. He was gone before he got picked. And they were not that high on this quarterback class as far as starters in the first round. And so when all the hype's been spread, there is pressure. There is times you're sitting there thinking like, you know what? That guy has a lot of sources in the national media. He probably knows something there. But you stick to your guns. You stick to what you know. And that's why I was saying, like, D-tackle's the move. I was sitting here saying, I think that this is what's going to be. It's what it was. Now, there's some people who talked about, hey, Derrick Harmon, he has some injury concerns. He had some things carrying over from college. This man led all of college football in interior defensive line pressures. He gets after the quarterback. He splits double teams. He does a lot of things you want. He's built just like Cam Hayward. He may not come out the gate being all-pro Cam Hayward, but I think he will come out the gate being a strong defensive force up the middle. He'll be a long-term answer for the position. They have their future Cam Hayward on the roster. This should be seen as a win by Steelers fans tonight.
The pick is divisive in the chat, guys. I was scrolling up and down. I think that's an interesting component of all this is how the fan base reacts. And listen, they're going I think we're going to be talking about Shedeur Sanders for a long time in Pittsburgh. Whether he works out or whether he doesn't, because I think there was a contingent of people that believe they need a quarterback. Jason and Paul, I'll go to Jason first, then Paul. How do you read the early reaction here, which seems to be fairly mixed?
I don't know if I'm getting that. I was looking on social media. I'm seeing a lot of Harmon, man.
I'm seeing people who love it, but I'm seeing people who hate it. And there
are
seem to be a
people
lot
who
in
hate
between.
it. There's a lot of people who hate it.
Point me to them. I'm seeing, thank God we didn't draft a quarterback.
Well, in the comment section,
great
you're fine.
Pick. Okay.
On Twitter, there's a lot of people who wanted Shedeur. There's a lot of people who are just really high on Shedeur Sanders, and they're thinking that the Steelers just passed on the next franchise quarterback. I don't think they did.
Yeah, I don't. Why? Like, what evidence do you have that a quarterback would be a smarter move than a defensive tackle that they really need?
Yes.
Harmon checks every box that they would want. I don't know, man. It just doesn't link up to me that you're looking at this being a down year for quarterbacks, and you're mad that they didn't take a quarterback. I'm thankful they didn't take a quarterback. It would have been a reach. No, if they find a way, I don't know how this would exist, and I don't think it's going to happen. If they would find a way to get into the second round and take one of these guys, okay. But you've already addressed your defensive tackle need.
Right.
So anything on top of this is gravy. Again, I don't know how they get back into it.
Well,
Paul,
I was going to say, well, what I think most people, honestly, leading up to this over the last few days, doing my podcast or whatever, I got to be honest with you. I think most people were kind of like, we're not high on Milroe, and we're not high on Shedeur Sanders, and we're probably not high on Jaxson Dart. And as a result, you know what? We'd rather them go in a different direction. I will say this, and I wrote about this week, maybe. I still believe the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback in this draft.
They will. At some point.
And you know what? Here's my thing. Chris, I know you evaluate tape and you look at things a lot closer than I do. But if in the third round the kid from Louisville is still on the board and they take him, I think that would actually not be a terrible pick.
I think he's a fine future, he's a fine backup quarterback that you just put on your roster for a pinch. I think there's some really good Mason Rudolph type guys in this draft, Paul. Will Howard would be fine. Jalen Milroe as a backup in the third or fourth, fifth round. That's where you're looking to get the quarterbacks in this draft class, but not in the first round for a back. You don't draft Jamarcus Russell when Chris Jones is on the board. That's what I'm not saying that Shedeur Sanders would have been Jamarcus Russell, who was a terrible first overall pick, but I'm saying if you think a quarterback is actually a second round pick, you don't pick him in the first round over a guy that you think can be a generational player, which is what I think that they think they got in Derrick Harmon.
And I would say this, I kind of feel like this probably solidifies what I've always thought, which is the Steelers are pretty confident they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. I just feel like, they're pretty confident that he's eventually going to, come their way. I don't know, I obviously don't know. I don't know that anybody really knows. But, they've had conversations with him. They kind of know. But the bottom line is they've been setting it up all time, for a long time, that they were going to have a bridge quarterback this year. Whoever it was going to be a bridge quarterback. That told me that they weren't really high on any of the quarterbacks that were in this draft, that they were probably going to take a flyer on a guy in maybe the third, fourth, fifth round. But they weren't going to go with their first round pick and use and go get a quarterback. I mean, it's very clear to me now that none of those guys were rated very high.
Yeah, and I think the tumbling stock is it's so consistent, guys, that the mock drafters feel the need to press these guys higher than maybe they deserve to go, and sometimes they're right, but they never seem to get the flack when they're wrong. Now, granted, we still got a long way to go. What do you guys think of the ESPN? I saw an ESPN graphic up here before saying there was a 96% chance that Shedeur Sanders would be drafted by now. I don't know how this is a situation. I don't know how, listen, I love analytics. I'm probably the biggest analytics guy on this show right now. But I don't know how you analytic something like that doesn't have some tangible
you make up a
relation to
number
on-field
and nobody can argue with
right.
you, and it sounds great.
I will say this. Take it for whatever it's worth. But Antonio Brown just tweeted out, I keep trying to tell you Rodgers is a Steeler.
Paul, I think he's definitely signing. Like that's. I think Aaron Rodgers is taking his time doing whatever it's going to. He's going to sign. He'll be there in training camp. They'll draft Will Howard, Tyler Shuck, one of those guys, and then that'll be their 4 quarterbacks heading into camp. And that'll be that. But the move is not for this year to be the big quarterback year. And now the Chargers get Omarion Hampton.
Wow. So, okay, we got to get Jason out of here because he's going to be starting to write a column. Paul, can you stay with us on the other side of this break?
Sure. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, please do, because Chris has got to take a break as well. So we're going to go to break here briefly. I'll come back. It'll be me and Paul, so stay tuned. We're at Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. There's hundreds of beers on tap in bottles and cans. So come on down if you haven't already. Grab a bite, grab a beer with us. Also, please subscribe to the channel if you're new tonight. We've got thousands of you joining us from around the world. So if you're new here, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Sports watching needs and great food? Meet me at Mike's. Mike's Beer Bar was voted best sports bar in Pittsburgh. 300 local beers, 80 local taps, over 500 beers, and steak on a stone. Mike's Beer Bar next to PNC Park, Federal Street, North Shore.
Home is where your heart is, and your concrete is the path to get there. So when your concrete starts to settle or becomes dangerous, it's time to breathe new life into it. There's no need to replace your sunken concrete when you choose A1. Our leveling process lifts your existing concrete to eliminate trip hazards for up to 70% off the cost of replacement. With over 30 years of proudly serving the greater Pittsburgh area, you can trust that our experts will help you love your concrete again. Give your concrete a second chance and schedule your free estimate today.
We gave the all-electric Prolog EX class-leading passenger space. And we made its tech intuitive with Google built-in. Perhaps that's why we were named Best Overall EV and Hybrid Brand by Kelley Blue Book. It's nice when a dream comes together. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or visit your local Honda dealer today.
right, we are back on the Steelers NFL Draft live stream. I am Adam Bittner. I'm joined by Derek Stilley, our Post-Gazette intern in person. Excited to get your thoughts on the draft. We also still have Paul Zeise joining us remotely. Paul, I want to start with this. We had a comment about maybe Shedeur goes to Cleveland now. So what would your thoughts be of that scenario? Because obviously they're coming on, what is that, the last pick of the first round? Or no, it would be the first pick of the second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the Browns end up with him as a second rounder after what they pulled off in the first round and they got some extra picks and they got another first round pick, honestly, I don't know that that's a terrible decision by them. What's interesting is I think that they probably are going to have their choice of all three of these guys. Like Adam, all three of these guys are probably going to sneak through now to get to the second round. And at that point, teams will be a little bit less reluctant to pick them because your first round pick has to be a guy that's an impact player or somebody that you think is actually going to really become a very good player for you. And whatever you think about Jalen Milroe, Jaxson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, maybe all three of them become incredible quarterbacks, and maybe all three of them become great players. But by the same token, maybe they don't.
Yeah. Derek, I want to get your thoughts. You are an Eagles fan. You're come to us via Penn State, via New York, but you're an Eagles fan. So I'm curious, your outside view of the Steelers and the decision they made tonight. We kind of get in our little bubble here at times, and we've been fixated on the defensive line, but I know the national conversation, maybe the conversation you've been watching a little bit more, has been more connected to the quarterbacks. Did it surprise you that the Steelers went the direction that we've been talking about all night rather than going with Shedeur Sanders? How did you view the pick?
It didn't surprise me, not one bit actually. It's actually kind of concerning in my opinion because I feel as though the Steelers may be in the same trajectory or in the same cycle over and over and over and over and over again, but I could see how somehow this could have broken that cycle. As you know, they drafted Kenny Pickett around this range a couple years back and it didn't work out, so I think a little bit of fear might have hit the franchise into maybe not drafting Shedeur Sanders. Could it be the right decision? I don't know. They could get him in the second round. The Browns could also get him in the second round, and he could be their franchise quarterback for years to come. I like the Derrick Harmon pick. I really do. But I'm really interested to see what the quarterback situation is and how Steelers fans react. Because if I was a Steelers fan, what are you selling me on for this season? And I mean, what is the end goal? Your team, as an overall team, you're not bad enough to be in the top 10 or even maybe the top 15 next year. But are you selling me that Mason Rudolph is going to take me to the playoffs and win me a playoff game?
Paul, I know a lot of people in the comments have been talking about Mason Rudolph, and I am somewhat surprised that the Mason Rudolph discourse is taking off as much as it is, because I think a lot of people, I don't know why we've lost Aaron Rodgers in this conversation, but maybe people are looking, past this coming season. If you do have Aaron Rodgers, they look at it maybe more like a Russell Wilson situation where it's a one-year type of thing, and then you're right back into the same conversation next year where Mason Rudolph might be the only body you go into next season with. Is that a valid way to be reacting, is having an opinion about Mason Rudolph even though we know Aaron Rodgers is still out there?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is if it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. And I think Chris Carter, he said they're going to sign him. He'll be their guy. But listen, Adam, we always knew that it was going to be a bridge quarterback, whether it was Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph. And here's the thing, if Mason Rudolph is the guy, okay, if Mason Rudolph is the guy for a year, if you look at their roster, you kind of know they'll be what, 9-7 or I'm sorry, what is it, 9-8 or 10-7, and probably losing the first round. If Aaron Rodgers is their guy, maybe they're one game better and maybe they win a game in the playoffs. I think it was always going to be a bridge quarterback situation because we've been saying for a long time that this draft class of quarterbacks just is not that good. So, Mason Rudolph, to me, I don't know that he's good enough to be your starter long term. But Adam, is it that crazy to say that you could win maybe 10 games with him or so? 9-10 games with him? I don't think that's crazy.
We saw it. We've seen it, Paul. We've seen them do that. Now, granted, some of that was Duck Hodges. It wasn't all Mason Rudolph. And I think the one game that Mason Rudolph's never going to outrun is that tie against Detroit when they were winless. Came to Acrisure Stadium, and that was looked at as a gimme, and he didn't get it. When Ben Roethlisberger was injured, I guess that was 2021, Ben's final season. I think with a lot of Steelers fans, he's never outrun that particular game. As people look at it and say, if you're going to be a backup quarterback, if you had a first-round grade, remember we talked about that so much, Paul. The Steelers had a first-round grade on Mason Rudolph, and that's a game you're supposed to be able to come in and win. I'd counter by saying, look what Detroit did pretty much from that point forward. That was kind of almost the turning point for that franchise. They've become a terror in the NFC. I look at, to answer your question, Derek, I think people are looking toward next season because I think the underplayed thing, we have not mentioned it on the stream tonight, we've talked about it a ton in the podcast, is that the Steelers are going to have those comp picks from letting Justin Fields, from letting Najee Harris, from letting those guys walk. They're going to have those comp picks going into a draft in Pittsburgh where you expect that they're going to want to make some level of a splash. So maybe they're not selling you anything this season. Maybe they're saying that this is a season where you take your chance with Aaron Rodgers and maybe he catches fire one more time, stirs the echoes, but otherwise you're marshaling your resources for a year from now to go after an Arch Manning, a Nico Iamaleava, a Drew Aller, some of those guys that are at the top of that quarterback class next season. Before you answer that, Derek, just want to let everyone know Matthew Golden, a guy the Steelers did have in for a visit, ends up going to Green Bay at number 3. But go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, first I love the Matthew Golden pick. I think it adds to a crowded receiver room and it's going to separate the dogs from the followers. But for the Steelers, if you're pushing all your chips onto next year in a draft class of quarterbacks that you think is going to be profoundly better than it is this year, but we have to also understand that there is a chance that the draft class is also underwhelming like it was this year. Quentin Ewers was supposed to be a guy. Spencer Rattler in years past was supposed to be a guy. Jaxson Dart was supposed to be a first-round talent. Shedeur Sanders was supposed to be a first-round talent. And all of Jalen Milroe was supposed to be a first-round talent. There were times in the season, Jalen Milroe was mocked as a top 5 pick. I think we all lived through these times. So we're all betting that it's going to map out the way that we thought it was going to map out this year when it didn't even do that this year. I think it's a lot of pressure. But if I was the Steelers, I would definitely look into a Jalen Milroe later in the draft because then you cover all bases. Then you cover Jalen Milroe is the plan for the future if you need to provide a solution. You cover next year, you have the compensation picks to move up in the draft and maybe get an Archie Manning or play for a better quarterback next year if Mason Rudolph or Jalen Milroe doesn't work out. And you got your player in Derrick Harmon. So I don't think it's necessarily over for the Steelers. I just think they need to move very smart in the next 6 months of the season, especially with Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers will come to Pittsburgh and he will make it the Aaron Rodgers show, which I've heard a lot of people were scared about Dion. So you need to move very careful if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers to make sure that you line up the correct way.
But again, hold up. Shedeur Sanders has accomplished absolutely nothing. I mean, so for him to make it his show, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Fame quarterback that's already won a Super Bowl. If he comes in and he does what we think he can do, I have no problem if he's a little bit of a diva, because all these quarterbacks are divas. Agreed. At least he's accomplished enough in his career that you say to yourself, okay, and I don't think that, honestly, I didn't get the impression, watching that McAfee interview, I don't get the impression that's what he's looking for. I get the impression that he wants to try and win a Super Bowl. And so I'm not worried about Aaron Rodgers. I know some people are. I'm not worried about him. I think that if he comes in with the Steelers' philosophy, their roster, the way they play, and all that other stuff, they'll have a chance. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but they'll have a chance maybe to win a playoff game with Aaron Rodgers. Mason Rudolph, to me, is maybe a little notch below. But if they build the way that we think they're building, and I think they need to get a cornerback. Adam, we talked about this before. I thought cornerback was a position where, you know what, I know they've got Darius Slay, but they probably could use one more guy at that position too. if they come out of this with a defensive tackle, a corner, and say a running back, and then they get Aaron Rodgers, I don't know how you could hate their offseason.
Yeah, I would love for them to draft a cornerback. I think Slay still has a couple years left, but he is older. And I do agree with your point that Aaron Rodgers has proven himself to be worth the trouble, 100%. I just think I'm honestly more interested in the Steelers now than I was before the pick, because now there's a lane that they want to be in, but there's also a lot of question marks to how they're going to fulfill that lane in the future. So I think that's what makes it interesting.
Paul, I want to get your thoughts on that quarterback class for next year. I think Derek raises an interesting point. Is there's no sure things. Of course, as soon as you mentioned Drew Aller, the haters come out. I don't know if they're Pitt fans. I don't know if they're Penn State fans who are still living off of that last interception in the Orange Bowl. I'll say this. I still love Drew Aller as a quarterback for Penn State. I am unpersuaded about him as a quarterback in the NFL. I think I'd say the same thing about Nico Iamaleava, especially about this episode of him leaving Tennessee and heading to UCLA in the last couple of weeks. The decision-making there, I think, is questionable, which, so I almost still look at next year's draft as Arch Manning. And I'll even say this about Arch Manning. I think he's going to be pretty good, but we haven't seen enough of him that I know he's going to be as good as a lot of people are talking, as kind of a given that he's going to be, the next big thing in the NFL. Maybe he'll prove me wrong this year at Texas, but we don't have enough tape for me to really believe in any of these guys to kind of be putting your eggs in that basket, per se.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, again, it's one of those things where I would tell you, I think next year, obviously, Arch Manning being the guy that everyone's pointing to, let's wait to see what he does at Texas. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things where I honestly believe that when we really look at this, next year's class, there aren't any sure things. I like Drew Aller. I'll tell you why I like him. I think he's a winner. I think he's just a tough guy. I think he knows how to win games. I think he's got a really good nose. He's a hard-nosed guy and all that other stuff. But to me, I think all of those guys for next year, I don't know if any of them are going to pan out either. I like that group a little bit more than this year, but I don't know that it's like markedly better than this year. So that's the thing that you get into this thing where it's one of those things where it's important to note that you have to decide what year you're going to get a quarterback and go get him and see how it works.
Lenora Sellers, people are pointing out in the comments, is another guy who's in that mix. So, by the way, Andrew Rush, could we get Chris back on camera here? He has just stepped back in. So let me jump in here and say that the Giants have traded up to number 25, trading back into the first round.
Could they take a quarterback?
Got to be a quarterback, right?
Yeah, I think that's the speculation here at Mike's Beer Bar that they are trading back in.
It's Dart. I'm calling it. I think it's going to be Jaxson
Dart. It's 100% Dart. Correct, right there.
There it is.
It's Dart.
There it is.
Wow.
Jaxson
Dart before Sanders.
Jaxson Dart.
Woo!
Jaxson Dart is a New York Giant.
Jeez.
Wow.
Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Jaxson Dart.
Thoughts on Jaxson Dart jumping Shedeur Sanders here?
I think this is a mistake. I think the Giants are.
I love being an Eagles fan. It's
That's
great.
the best way to put it.
It's a
Wow.
treat every year. I love being an Eagles fan, man.
My God.
I love it. It's great. This is
a
wow.
generational fold. I'm sorry, I don't listen. I could be wrong. Jaxson Dart may have it. Just when I look at what he brings to the table, like I said, Shedeur Sanders is a second-round pick. Dart is like a third-round pick in my book, like maybe a fourth-round pick. I don't see it with him. I'm sorry. But I had him going in this round. I had him going to the Rams. So actually, I got the spot right. As far as where he was going to go to. Because I think that some people really believe in him. But I'm sorry. Just the things that I saw, just the tape had a lot of red flags. I don't like it. So hey, if the Giants believe, maybe they'll get this one right. They certainly felt that way about Daniel Jones when they picked him.
Brian Batko is back from the South Side. We're going to bring him in to give his reaction first to the Derrick Harmon pick. Brian, your thoughts on them going the direction you projected they would, and passing on these quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart, I don't know if you saw in the interchange there, Jaxson Dart goes to the Giants at number 25, who traded up to get him. But give me your thoughts on Derrick Harmon first.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that Mike Tomlin just detailed for us in the media room is kind of what I saw in Harmon as well. And this isn't exactly a nuanced or super inside football take. I mean, you pull up the NFL.com combine scouting report for the guy, and there's an anonymous quote from a league source to Lance Zierlein saying he looks like a Raven or a Steelers type player. And yeah, I mean, when you combine the arm length with the sheer size of him and his versatility, what he can do along the front line. I mean, yes, it is not only their type of guy, but it's what they need to combat the Ravens inside this division. We all have images of Derrick Henry romping through their defense last year. They needed help. They needed better talent. They needed some youth in the pipeline, and they've got it with Harmon, who I think another aspect of this thing, guys, is somebody else who he really wants to be here. I mean, he played with Connor Hayward a year or two at Michigan State. He looks up and kind of models his game after Cam Hayward. Maybe he can take that torch from him. It's almost reminiscent of last year's first rounder, Troy Fautanu, who looked up to Troy Polamalu and loved the Steelers as a kid.
So we got some moves here.
I'm about to say there's another one.
The Falcons have traded back up into the first round. They take the 26th spot from the Rams after the Giants have taken Jaxson Dart. Brian, your thoughts on Dart going before Sanders? Where do we think Sanders actually ends up right now?
So I had him falling out of the first round, and I think that's going to happen unless you get the Lamar Jackson type of trade where a team does swoop in here. Just because, I mean, somebody with Shedeur who might take some time to assimilate to running a more pro-style offense and dealing with some of the challenges and obstacles he's going to have to deal with in the NFL, especially if he's not a day one starter, which I don't see any teams where that's going to be the case at this point, unless it would be like the Saints coming back up to get him. But it would help to have that fifth-year option for that kind of player. But we'll see if there's that level of interest in the league in Shedeur. I personally think he's a better prospect than Jaxson Dart, but I can understand why some teams would think there's a little higher floor, at least with Dart. And obviously we know with Shedeur, it is kind of hard to as hard as it is to separate an Ole Miss quarterback from playing in that Lane Kiffin wide open first read offense. It's hard to separate Shedeur from some of the, Dion stuff and, I guess, let's just say the buzz and the hype that he sort of has built for himself, but fairly or unfairly, that follows you to the league.
Brian, are you excited to see the Russell Wilson Jaxson Dart interplay play out from afar this time rather than up close and personal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The Giants are going to be a weird team, guys. It feels like the front office and the coaching staff are. I'm
so happy as an Eagles fan.
I don't want to say Joe Shane and Brian Dable or dead men walking, but to put it nicely, it seems like they're kind of close to lame duck status territory here, and at least they get an immediate impact player in Abdul Carter at 3. But this feels one where it's like, hey, we're the Giants organization. We're not Joe Shane and Brian Dable worried about our job security. We want Jaxson Dart to be here waiting in the wings as a potential franchise quarterback.
So is there a world where Jaxson Dart starts week 1? Because I think we're living in that world right now.
I don't know. I mean, with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston there, I'd be surprised, and I think that would be kind of foolish of them to do that, especially because, like I just said, I mean, I think there's a lot of adjustments any rookie quarterback has to make, especially when you're coming from that, just you're in such a college-ish offense with Lane Kiffin and up tempo, and it's going to take some time, I think, for him. But that's the beauty of what they have there. Unlike the Saints or maybe the Steelers, they do have time to kind of let him get up to speed. And Russell Wilson might be on a shorter leash right now, though, than he was a couple hours ago.
Brian, let me get your early thoughts as we look toward day 2. Assuming the Steelers aren't going to be one of these teams trading back into the first, they don't have quite the ammunition that some of the others do. What is the number one spot you're now looking at with defensive tackle addressed?
Well, you can't not look at quarterback, but I think a lot of fans, rightly or wrongly, breathe a sigh of relief that they are not quote-unquote reaching on a quarterback, or just simply, misevaluating or misusing a first-round pick on one in a year that maybe there was only one first-round quarterback. Obviously, there's two now with Dart, but a lot of teams may not necessarily have looked at him that way. And I think one thing that's interesting to consider here too, fellas, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this conversation. Our Jerry Dulac reported that the Steelers had a first-round grade on Jaxson Dart, so I think it's kind of a natural question to say, you've got a first-round grade on a quarterback, and you're picking at 21. I don't think anybody would argue, even in the AFC North, that defensive lineman is a more significant position than who's taking snaps for you. So, what does this mean for the Steelers' pursuit of a rookie quarterback? Is it the third round? Is it the fourth round? Is it even later? Does this, inherently mean that they are even more confident in Aaron Rodgers circling back to Pittsburgh than people might have thought before tonight? I don't know. There's a lot of tentacles to this discussion, but I'll just say, if they do only have one pick tomorrow, my guess would be quarterback or running back, because those are still, to me, the two biggest holes on the roster.
Brian, has just to clarify, Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan have not addressed the media yet in terms
No, they
of
have.
this pick.
They have.
Oh,
Yes.
Can you give me some highlights for the viewers here?
That's what I'm here for. Omar Khan said, he was asked about the quarterback position, which, you never know exactly if we on the outside are barking up the same tree as what they're working with down here within the organization. But he put on his best poker face and just said the player that we wanted was there and we took it. So make of that what you will. Read into that what you will. Obviously there was so much national buzz for Shedeur Sanders. Was Mike Tomlin working some gamesmanship there on Tuesday? Sure seems a lot more likely now that he was, rather than laying the breadcrumbs for people to sort of prepare themselves for that experience. So, they both just said he's their kind of guy. They had a great pre-draft visit with him. Omar Khan said they really started to take a liking to him, or at least become more convicted in that interest in him at the Combine in Indy, I guess, when they met with him. So, he said, or Tomlin said, that Derrick Harmon is going to be able to, play kind of that Cam Hayward type of position, whether that's in the base 3-4, where you'd probably still have Keanu Benton as your, de facto nose tackle. And then in sub-package football, if you have Hayward and Harmon collapsing pockets from either side of the line, that could be the vision there for sure.
Derek, Chris, Paul, any of you guys have any questions for Brian before we let him go?
Brian, if you're the Steelers right now, is the position that you want to see not picked until the end for the rest of the first round running back, or do you care at all with how far back they have to go in the third?
No, I don't think they need to worry too much about either one of those, because this is a deep running back draft class.
It is.
I think you could probably make the argument like, hey, please let Travion Henderson and or Quinshon Judkins fall to the third round. But one, I don't think that's particularly realistic. And two,
right, I
think there's still some pretty good prospects and ones that have come here to the South Side to chop it up with the Steelers and get to learn more about them. So I think they made the right move here. We'll never know, of course, if Kenneth Grant and or Walter Nolen were higher on their boards, just like we'll never know if Amarius Mims or Taliesa Fuaga were higher on their board than Troy Fautanu last year. But we know what positions they wanted to address, and they got to do that with Derrick Harmon.
Derrick, anything for Brian?
Yeah. Is there a lack of emphasis on cornerback? I know Darius Slay is there, and you have Joey Porter Jr., but Darius Slay is on a relative one-year deal, and he's a little old. I mean, this is a deep cornerback. Yeah, a little old. I mean, he's still got some juice in the tank. That's big play Slay. You know what I mean? But he's a little old. I mean, is Will Johnson still on the board? Is it possible maybe we trade up for a corner?
I mean, that'd be interesting. I'm surprised that this fall for Will Johnson. I had him going 6th overall. I clearly very badly misread what teams thought of him. I just thought he was really good at Michigan, and then the injury issues weren't that big of a concern. But man, he is. If he's going to slip out of the first round, I'll be stunned. And if you're the Steelers, I just think, you're still a year away from really having that atop your needs, Derek. I mean, Corey Trice is still a guy with some potential and upside. And yeah, I mean, you signed Darius Slade for $10 million this year. You better get something out of him, or that was kind of a pointless, useless move this offseason. So I could see, I do see them addressing corner at some point this weekend, but I don't necessarily know that it'll be tomorrow night.
Paul, you have anything for Brian while the train is going past down there on the south side?
Nope. No, we're good. I answered all the questions. I mean, again, to me, I think it's very simple. You get a guy who you think could be a starter in the first round. That's really what it comes down to. You're not sure about any of those quarterbacks. I have no problem with what the Steelers did here. They got a guy they think can be a starting defensive tackle for them for 8 to 10 years.
I'll leave you guys with this. Derrick Harmon, already a very easy player to root for. His conference call with us upstairs here at Steelers HQ got pretty heavy, got pretty emotional. I knew coming into the draft that his mother had a lot of medical issues, and that was part of his inspiration as an athlete over the years. But he informed us tonight that he had a lot of family, including his dad and aunts and uncles and stuff at his draft party. But his mom, Tiffany Sane, was not there. She was in the hospital on life support, and obviously not doing well. And he's gonna head straight there now and tell her, I guess whether she can hear him or not, that her son just got drafted. And obviously it's an emotional story, an emotional night for him. And yeah, I mean, I think he's somebody who he's gonna tug at the heartstrings for sure.
Well, thank you for those inside details, Brian. We're going to let you go as immediately as the train ends, apparently. But thank you for joining us. You've been a soldier tonight for us, so we appreciate you joining us a couple of times, and look forward to getting you on here more tomorrow.
Yeah, great job steering the ship, Adam. Great job getting the pick early, Chris, and great job, Derek, filling in. Paul, I'm sure you've been splendid as well.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, Brian, take care. Thanks, man.
All right.
All right, here we are. We're back. It's just the two feeds now. Paul, I'll let you get some thoughts in here. We're now at the Ravens. The pick is in. Do you have any thoughts on who they might take, who they should take as they look to get to that next level? We talk about the Steelers not having had a playoff win. The Ravens seem to be the team that can't get to the next level beyond just getting a playoff win or two per year. What's going to be the biggest priority for them?
Well, I mean, I think when you look at what they need to do, I mean, I feel like they've lost some guys on defense. So probably any guy they could pick on any of the three levels of defense, I think they're going to be pretty good. But if it were me, I'd probably try and go get one more playmaker for Lamar Jackson. That's just me. I just feel like, to me, that's what I would do. But I feel like they're going to go defense, and probably they'll go out and get somebody either who can rush the passer or stop, the other team from throwing. So let's see what they're going to do right here.
Well, there's plenty of DBs on the board. Nick Emanwori, Will Johnson, Malachi Starks. They could really use a safety. They got beat deep a lot this year. I would not be shocked if this is a safety right here.
Yeah, you think back
I think they're going to take Starks.
Yeah, you think back to that Bengals game, right, where Joe Burrow lit
There it
up.
is. There it is.
Wow.
Safety position.
Derek Stilley nailing the pick. Much as
Makes sense.
I know he was the guy you talked about for your Eagles. You liked him a lot. Can you give me some thoughts on him?
This is a really good pick for them. I think he really fits their play style. He wants to come down and he wants to lay the boom on people. And I can already see it, one high safety, forcing in breakers, and him breaking the ball up, him laying wide receivers out. He is the perfect fit for that team, and that's why I thought they would take him. He has some coverage issues, but I don't think they're that serious. I think he can get it fixed, loosen those hips up a little bit, but I think that's a really good pick for the Steelers.
The Ravens.
The Ravens, excuse me.
No, you're good. But Malachi Starks, I like him. He was the second safety on my board. I prefer Nick Emanwori just because he tested off the charts, and he's 6'3". He has his speed and burst was just so much crazier. But you're right. Malachi Starks is a great tackler, plays in the box well. And I think that was a big weakness the Ravens had, was they did not have the middle off-ball defensive back presence to contain teams down the middle part of the field. And that became a problem for them. Kyle Hamilton is a great player there, but they had no one next to him. And so they needed someone here. They drafted Nate Wiggins last year on the outside. Marlon Humphrey's a really good corner on the outside. Roquan Smith is a good linebacker. But now this shores up the defense. This is a pick, I think, for them. They said, hey, this was our biggest defensive weakness last year, and this cost us against Josh Allen. This could cost us against Patrick Mahomes. This could cost us against Joe Burrow. So let's not play around. Let's get the guy that we think is the best safety on the board. They went with Malachi Starks. I'm excited to see what he does for Baltimore.
Another reason I like this trade really quickly, it allows Kyle Hamilton to do more of what he's been doing, playing in the box and or roaming at the safety spot and being a ball hog. This is a very good pick. This is a very good pick.
Obviously, you can't compare Mason Graham going at number 5 to Malachi Starks going down at 27. I think we know who's higher on boards, but given who do you think had the best night relative to their draft position in the division? And I'll throw the Steelers into that. The 4 teams, how would you rank the picks relative to what they needed to do tonight?
Honestly, I think the Browns did very well because you get Mason Graham, who I think could be a generational defensive tackle, and you got a future first-round pick, and you got a second-round pick out of it. Like, that's a really good haul for still getting a really good player. Now, there's some people who think they fumbled the bag by not just taking Travis Hunter because they think that he's that generational of a talent. I think he is one. But I think that Mason Graham can also be that dangerous at defensive tackle, and that's a need for them right now, especially in this run with the Baltimore Ravens running all over people in the division. So if I had to pick one, I'd say the Browns because they got what might be the best player that was picked tonight in the AFC North, and they got a future first-round pick out of it.
Paul, you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Browns did well. Honestly, I think all the teams in the division did well. I think they all addressed needs. I think that we all know the Bengals needed defense. They needed defensive help. They got somebody who maybe is going to be able to put pressure on quarterbacks. I mean, I think the Ravens filled a big need, and I think the Steelers filled a big need. I'll go with Chris and say the Browns just because they actually got, on top of a good player, they got extra picks. So if you want to tell me that they've got a little bit more volume, I would go with that. But I just think at the end of the day, what we saw from the entire division is they all addressed an important need.
Yeah, I like it as well. I want to be a little different. I would say the Browns as well because I think they have had the strongest draft. But I like what the Panthers did too. Taking T-Mac early. You give Bryce Young no excuse. It's make or break, and you're setting your franchise on a course to know if they have a franchise quarterback, understand that they don't have a franchise quarterback if that's how it goes, and being able to draft that way next year. I like it. You sped up the timeline, and that makes it good for the Panthers.
We're into the shank of the evening. Last 5 picks to go here: Detroit, Washington, Buffalo, Kansas City. And the Eagles, the Steelers saw a lot of those teams late last season. They were the teams that were a lot better than the Steelers. Chris, who are you most intrigued by of that remaining AFC group? I guess I'll just say the Bills and the Chiefs, and what they need to accomplish to maintain their station, well above a team like the Steelers that safely made the playoffs, but clearly is a cut below.
I'll say this. I think the Chiefs' window is a lot closer to closing than the Bills. And I think that they need to be a little bit more desperate. Not desperate. They need to lock in this pick. If they don't, you run the risk of, you'll still have Patrick Mahomes. And, I think Xavier Worthy had a good rookie season. I think he's going to develop with him. But Chris Jones ain't going to be around forever. Travis Kelce is already on his way out. Trent McDuffie's fine. They got players there, but they need to start. They need to hit on guys that are going to help now. And so I think the Bills, you also want to do it. Now the great thing is that the Chiefs can say, well, we won 3 Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes, so we're pretty good there. So it's not like they lost out. I just think that their window, if they wanted to win more with this current crew, is closing. But the Bills, maybe they get more desperate because they're the team that's like, hey, we haven't been to the Super Bowl with Josh Allen yet. Like that's the thing about Lamar Jackson and the Ravens and Josh Allen and the Bills. You've had the MVP level quarterback since 2018. and you haven't done anything with it. And I think that's the problem that they run into. Tyleik Williams.
Wow, that's one we talked a lot about as, maybe being more of a depth guy.
Going to the Lions.
Yeah, we talked about him more in the I shouldn't say depth. I should say more day 2, day 3 type. No, maybe not day 3 either, but certainly a day 2 pick that maybe if the Steelers passed on a defensive tackle in the first round, maybe he's a fallback option you can go to. You're surprised to see him go in round 1.
A little, yeah. He's more of a run stuffer than anything else. I think he is mean and nasty. Like, I think the Lions got a good player here. If the Steelers still had a second-round pick, he would have been a guy that if they passed on D-tackle in the first round, I would have been saying, like, hey, get him in the second, he'll be a stud. But him going in the first, very interesting in my eyes. And also that he goes over to Darius Alexander, because I really like Darius Alexander a little bit better than Tyleik Williams, but I like Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. A run stuffer, a mean guy. He'll be really good. Now I'm intrigued. Where do the Commanders go here with all the options available?
I think it's also intriguing, Paul, this Tyleik Williams pick, because I think it puts a little more in focus why the Steelers felt the urgency to get Derrick Harmon. Maybe they knew what the murmurs were around the league in terms of the defensive tackles and said, nah, we're going to get our guy now. We're not comfortable with them lasting all the way to 83, someone that we really like. Does a pick like this reinforce that for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think one of the things we're seeing about this whole entire draft, and is that guys, I think that the teams are basically saying they need to go get the guys they want, period. Yep. And the guys that are going to help them win, and the guys that they need. And I think one of the things that we saw probably more this year than I can remember is how much smokescreen that everybody's thrown out there. I mean, it's been amazing how wrong so many of these quote-unquote experts have been, and all that other good stuff. So to me, I mean, when you look at the picks that are left, I mean, Washington to me is a team that probably could use a lot of different positions, even though they were in the playoffs. I mean, the one position they obviously don't need help at is quarterback, but they could go in a lot of different directions and I think justify any of them. So, that's honestly a good thing if you ask me. I'm going to I'm going to start writing in a few minutes here. So
Okay, Paul.
if you don't need me anymore,
no, we're just kind of running out the clock here. Well, we got 3-4 picks to go. So any final thoughts on the evening for the Steelers or the league in general?
well, look, I think the Steelers. I mean, again, it wouldn't shock me if they move up and try and get the quarterback. If they feel like Milroe or one of those guys early in the second round is worth it. I don't think they're going to do that, but that to me is probably what they're going to, what they're at least going to think about. But Adam, as we talked about, you know what? They got a defensive tackle. If they get a running back. And they get a running back, and they go get a cornerback. I don't know how you can hate whatever else happens with respect to everything else. Yep. Those are the three spots that they need somebody.
Yeah, I agree. And Paul, we'll let you go now, but thanks for joining us. And we're going to continue here from Mike's Beer Bar through the end. What'd you say, Paul?
We'll do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to having you back. Thanks for joining us, Paul. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I wanted to pull at that thread that Paul was bringing up there at the end, guys. Derrick, I think some people are going to be underwhelmed by the Steelers draft no matter what because of the absence of a second-round pick, and that at least on paper you're waiting until 83 right now tomorrow. So not just you're waiting for the third round, you're waiting for deep into the third round to get a guy. So there's a level on which this is not going to match the last couple of draft classes for people when the Steelers had 4 day 1 and day 2 picks. You're only going to have 2 unless they make some type of a deal. But there are good players available that going into tomorrow that you can feel pretty decent about. How's your view on that situation?
My view on the situation, I don't think the Steelers necessarily did anything wrong. I think they're really solidifying what their team is for this year, knowing they will need to make improvements, i.e. the offseason this year or in the draft and other trades next year. And I think it's a good plan. I think it's a sound plan. With Mike Tomlin as your coach, you have 2 wide receiver ones now, and you have a good defense. You're going to win minimum 8 to 9 games. no matter who goes out there as quarterback. It could be Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers. You're going to win minimum 8 to 9 games. So by doing that, you're going to figure out other positions on your team. Next year, you play for a quarterback. You know, I think it's a pretty good plan. And if they get like Paul said, if they get a cornerback and maybe, you know, a running back, that's a lot of explosiveness. It's a lot of explosiveness on a team that's maybe looking for a captain to steer the ship.
Derek, I know there's a lot of Steelers fans in Philadelphia who also pay close attention to the Eagles. Malachi Starks was your guy. He goes to the Ravens. So for those fans who are interested in what the Eagles have going on, especially after that Super Bowl victory, who are you looking at now to improve this team that's not Malachi Starks?
No one today. I think the Eagles trade out. I don't think there's a world where they stay at 32.
Only been one trade today, though, Derek. Is there going to be a taker for that pick?
You're right.
Maybe there will
That's
be
a good
because
question.
maybe someone.
That's a good question.
Maybe someone
somebody
wants that
will take
50-year option on, you know, a player if you get in at the end of the first round.
Right.
So that is a consideration. But let's just say they have to pick. Is there anyone that's or even a position that's sticking out to you?
I'm not mad if they go safety, and I'm not mad if they take Will Johnson and go cornerback at all. Because you could keep Cooper DeJean in the slot, you could keep Quinyon Mitchell out the outside, and I have another young stud in Will Johnson to play the other side of the outside. Now, there are lacking veteran leadership if they do that, because they will only have Reed Blankenship, who is seasoned, and the other safety position will be a question mark in Sidney Brown. So I still think that they try to lean corner, but because they are the Philadelphia Eagles, do not be surprised if they take D-line or O-line no matter what. Don't be surprised.
Josh Cornerly from Oregon is the pick for Washington at number 29. So, yeah, interesting end to the first round here. I had a question for you, Chris, but as far as we are in the evening, I lost it a little bit. You've been off mic for a few minutes here. What is sticking out to you right now?
Sticking out to me is how, again, I don't know where Shedeur Sanders is going to fall in this draft. And if he continues to fall in the second round, like, I don't know if there's always that question as far as where someone goes. Who wants to take the shot at him? You know, and you know, maybe it's the Browns because they got the second round pick back. I'm very curious to see where he goes, where the run on like backup quarterbacks will start with the Tyler Shucks and Will Howards of the world and Jalen Milrose. But running back is the position right now. Like when I asked Brian, and he was like, "I'm not too concerned about the rest of this. As long as no running backs get picked in these last three, I think it's a good sign." Like Travion Henderson is my top running back on my board right now. He's not going to fall to the Steelers, but the longer that he stays up there in the second round, the better chance that they're getting a good shot at like Quinshon Judkins or Dylan Sampson or R.J. Harvey or DJ Giddens, one of those really good mid-tier, like the running backs of that sweet spot that I've been talking about after the top 50 picks that I think could be really, really good for their running back wants this year.
I remembered my question.
Okay.
Obviously, going into day two, there's going to be a lot of talk about George Pickens because that is the only way for the Steelers to make tomorrow interesting, I think. You've passed on trading back. I don't know if you had a chance to trade back in the first round. But regardless, you didn't get that day two pick via trading back. Is there any other path for the Steelers than George Pickens?
No.
And has anything about the way the days unfolded changed your opinion about trading back with George Pickens? Are there receivers on the board that intrigue you? That if you get a receiver and a running back or a receiver and a quarterback by the end of tomorrow, you're feeling better about the Steelers now than you are with George Pickens and whatever they get at 83?
So if you were to force me to make that happen, I would have to trade Pickens and the third round pick to get a higher third and a second.
I don't like it.
I don't like it. That's the thing. Like, that's the thing. If you're forcing me to make that happen, I think right now, here's the thing. The Steelers think that they have a dog in George Pickens.
They do.
And here's the thing. I know people are sitting there, he's on the last year of his contract, blah, 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 all this stuff. Sure. They're not paying a quarterback. Not this year, not next year, probably not for 5 years.
I was about to say, probably not in the next 4 to 5, maybe 6 years.
So why not set yourself up with a potential Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson situation where, you know what, it's okay if you got Sam Darnold because you got them two dudes.
Yep.
And I think that's what they're going to be. They're setting themselves up to do. I said this to Jason on 93.7 The Fan last night when he was hosting. I would not be shocked now if George Pickens actually is more likely to sign an extension than he is to be traded away by the Steelers.
Where does the franchise tag fit into that conversation for you, Chris? I think
it fits in there.
How will George Pickens react to being on the franchise tag? Because I still feel like the Steelers seem somewhat unconvinced about him moving forward, and that they're going to have to see something else to want to give him that long-term deal. Do you think they're looking at next season and saying, all right, George, we're going to give you your chance to prove it, and if you don't, but we want to keep you around, we'll franchise tag you, we'll keep you for one more year, and then maybe you have an extension conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what it is, because George still has to prove he is that he is like a number one type receiver. Really? I think he has, because he hasn't put it all together yet. Like you look, he hasn't had that super duper season. He's had super duper games. He's had super duper plays. But like, this is a franchise where like Antonio Brown was the best receiver in football for 6 years. Like he hasn't had a year that fits into that category of one of those. Like he hasn't had a year that fits into a Hines Ward year, even when you look at that. Now, that's not saying he can't get there. But I think that like for example, 2 years ago, and like when the Steelers went on like a 3-game losing streak, there was that game against the Colts where he didn't throw a block for Jaylen Warren, and like it was very obvious, and like Mike Tomlin had to call him in his office and be like, George, cut that out, man. And then after that, George shaped up. But then there were times this year where it lacked off a bit. He needs to show that if he's going to be the guy that slacks off on some plays, that he's going to be a consistent producer at all times and just get the numbers for that. If they get Aaron Rodgers, you plug him in with Metcalf and Pickens, I think he has a chance to show that more than he's had a chance in his first 3 years.
So that leads into my question, right? Is he capable of showing that he is that type of receiver with a Mason Rudolph? I think the answer is flat out no.
Well, so here's the thing. What's George Pickens' best game ever?
With Mason Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph against the Bengals. When he torched that secondary. And so
the guys, I mean, it wasn't just George Pickens that had big votes of confidence for Mason Rudolph down the stretch last season.
And so that's the thing, is that I think George, and that's the thing, I think Mason Rudolph could be this team's Sam Darnold. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to take the Steelers to the promised land. I'm saying that he's going to be good enough if they keep Metcalf and Pickens and Freiermuth and they get a good running back and the offensive line takes a step forward, that they will be a competitive enough offense to make plays and be difference makers and be a better offense than they have been in the past. Also, the Eagles traded up. They are moving ahead of the Chiefs.
Okay.
Oh, no, they switched up. They switched with the Chiefs.
Okay.
They switched with the Chiefs.
That's an interesting trade, just being them two teams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that is kind of wild.
Interesting, yeah.
Maxwell Hairston goes to Buffalo, the cornerback from Kentucky.
Over Will Johnson is interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Wow.
Maxwell Hairston is fast, man, but he is small. He gets pushed around a lot. Like
I don't like that either.
Yeah. Like he'll be fast. He'll be quick. He'll keep up with anybody who's trying to get behind him. But that's a very interesting pick. I do wonder about Will Johnson.
There's got to be something. There's got to be something
that knee injury has to be some serious.
Yeah, there's got to be something. There's got to be something, because this doesn't make sense.
Maxwell Hairston was a bit player for the Steelers in some of these mock drafts. Some guy was trying to make a wave. You did talk about him a little bit. You said he got pushed around, but it seems like the Bills are pretty good at finding those plucky defensive backs as well. Guys,
they do.
Maybe you didn't, look at the first time. I think Jordan Boyer's that name that sticks out to me the most as a guy that didn't, kind of blow you away physically, but made a great career there. Is this possibly a case of them saying, maybe we're seeing things other people aren't, especially given that Will Johnson has these medical questions?
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of what has to be. I mean, Will Johnson's tape looks like a superstar cornerback at times.
Easily.
Right. So that injury report has to be some serious injury report. Like career threatening, won't be able to play this year at all type of an injury report.
Or lost some speed maybe, or some jumping ability, or something. Because it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, there were. I mean, even before the injury, my understanding was Will Johnson had some athletic questions to answer for people, and didn't necessarily do that in this process. Is it possible that it's as simple as that? Maybe you will be healthy. Maybe you will be a solid player. But there's enough question if you weren't quite where teams wanted you to be, in terms of how you were testing before the injury, and now you maybe have a half step. Maybe you're a half step slower for a period of time. That's enough to, even if it's not a career-threatening type of situation, it's enough to scare teams away in the first round.
Sorry, what was the question?
The physical questions with Will Johnson, how they factored into, he wasn't the most, he didn't test as well as some of these other guys to start with. Yeah. So then you take that and factor in the injury, and maybe that's just enough to push him into day two.
Maybe. I mean, obviously. I mean, he's not, unless the Eagles or the Chiefs take him here, he's a day 2 pick right now.
Will Johnson, a lot of people are floating around jihad for the Eagles. In my personal opinion, it doesn't make sense unless Nakobe Dean's injury is a lot worse than everybody thinks.
Right,
and
I agree.
You just signed Zach Bond. So they have to go DB or O-line or D-line. It doesn't make sense to go anything else.
The Eagles are going with Jahad Campbell. Jordan Schultz.
Sheesh. Wow.
Yeah.
So
I wonder about that too.
Nakobe's got to be.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
It's got to be serious.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. He's such a good player.
And a lot of people, but Jahad is a top 5. That's a top 5 talent.
He's a heck of a player, man.
Yeah, that's a top 5 talent, man. I mean, I'm on board, but it's just a lot of interesting things going on.
I'm going to rattle off some names for you guys. We obviously spent our time talking about Will Johnson, who's now number 1 on Kuiper's best available. Chris, who's best available left on your board at the moment?
I believe it would be Will Johnson. Let me check to make sure. It is Will Johnson. I had him ranked 11th overall on my big board. I still got Mike Green, Josh Simmons.
Nicky Manwari, your dude.
Yeah, Nicky Manwari. Campbell was just 1 pick above him. Luther Burden, wide receiver out of Missouri. Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State, and Emeka Egbuka's off the board. Donovan Ezaraku, Boston College. Darius Alexander, Toledo. So we got some players here. But Will Johnson, still high up on my board. I wonder if the Chiefs take the shot here, because you think, like, hey, if he works out, pair him up with Trent McDuffie, you could have some nasty cornerbacks.
Yeah, and that might be exactly what they do.
Interesting that Shedeur is still only number 10 on even Mel Kiper's board.
That's what I'm saying.
We knew you had him low, but he's right in the same range for Mel as he is for you. What? So that would be 42?
42. I had him at 44.
Right.
That's right where I had him at. It's just I did not think that Shedeur was that guy in this draft. Like, again, I love his moxie. I love his accuracy. I love his precision. I don't love his speed. I don't love his size. I don't love his arm strength. I don't love his processing to say that he's a good enough of a processor to make up for all those other things. I think that there's a chance that he could do that, but the chance of that weighs more of like a second-round pick next year.
I'll pose this question to both of you guys as we're winding down the stream here. I'm going to read off some of these names on this best available. Who's someone that, if you're a Steelers fan, you're most probably going to regret not being able to jump up and snag? We mentioned Will Johnson, Jahad Campbell, Mike Green, Josh Simmons, Eamon Warrior is at number 5.
A big one.
Darius Alexander's at number 7. Travion Henderson, I think, is the first name on my list of guy that it just seems like a dude. Having watched him up close at Ohio State for a long time, I think you'd love to see him as a Steeler. He's the one that jumps off the page at me. Going down a little bit further, Luther Burden, man, I think he could do some things in that receiving core that would help, that are different from what DK and from what George Pickens do well. I feel like I've been the only guy on that bandwagon of being like, I don't think the receivers room is as full as it needs to be. Luther Burden's a guy that, if he was available in that second round, that'd be really attractive to me. But what about you guys? Anyone on this list that's speaking to you?
Even worry. I'm interested in what you guys think about that regarding how much money is tied up in Minka Fitzpatrick. That's where I'm like, I don't know if it's possible. know what I mean?
No, I mean, that's the thing. Plus, they signed Juan Thornhill. So, like, they've got 3 safeties ready to go this year. And, like, the Nick Warriors' athleticism would change things up. Then I'd start to consider some things. But, like, Deshaun Elliott had a great year this year at strong safety. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think, with better cornerback play around him, will have more turnover opportunities. And Juan Thornhill is a really good deep safety option, better than DeMonte KZ. Like, I don't think, like, in fact, the last question to Mike Tomlin was, the press conference was, do you feel the need to go get that third safety since you guys didn't bring back DeMonte KZ? And his response was, we have Juan Thornhill. And then he got up and walked away. And I was like, yeah, I don't think they're going safety. Like, I think that would have been like a luxury pick where if, like, everything else didn't work that way, they saw him as being good enough. But, yeah, Travion Henderson speaks loudly. But you know what? There's a guy who they brought in for a top 30 visit who I don't see people talking about right now in the second round. And I'm really interested about Isaiah Thomas, the Florida State cornerback.
Man, you waited till Paul left.
Yeah, I know. He's probably someone saying, but when you look at Isaiah Thomas, yeah, he didn't run a great 40-yard dash, but he presses you. He beats you up at the line of scrimmage. He frames you up so well. Him and Joey Porter Jr. would play such the dual role next to each other long term. Now, I don't think he falls to the third round. I think he stays in the second, but that's someone I'd be like, him or Siobhan Revell, the cornerback out of East Carolina, who was hurt, but reportedly could run a 4.4 flat and looked really good against the small schools. Tough to say against the big schools because he played at East Carolina, but he's another guy I'm looking at. Benjamin Morrison, another corner out of Notre Dame. He's another guy that before this year was looking like a top 10 pick. Then he got hurt, missed most of the season, and they were like, okay, well, that's that. So he dropped way down a lot of people's boards.
Jack Besh is the guy you've loved.
I like Jack Besh, physical wide receiver out of TCU. They liked him at the Senior Bowl. A very good route runner. Alec Ayamanor, wide receiver out of Stanford. I love him. You know who I really love? 2 Iowa State dudes, Darian Porter and Jaden Higgins. Darian Porter is one of my favorite cornerbacks in this draft class. He has a 9.99 relative athletic score, almost a perfect athletic score. He flies. He's 6'4". He plays press. He plays man. He goes up and gets the football. Jaden Higgins, a 9.63 relative athletic score. Also a top 30 visit for the Steelers. And another type of guy that could project as a #1 prototype style of wide receiver. I don't think Higgins lasts long enough. I don't think Porter lasts long enough. Maybe Thomas if people just don't like his 40-yard dash. But I just threw a lot of names at you. But let's talk about running back, because running back is the position I've had slotted them being the most interested in the third round. You still got Henderson. You still got Quinshon Judkins, both the Ohio State guys. Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, a guy I really like. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. You still got Cam Scatterbo, but they haven't talked to Cam Scatterbo. I don't think he's someone they're actually looking at. DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. RJ Harvey out of Central Florida. Damian Martinez. I really like Damian Martinez. I don't know why they didn't bring him in for a top 30 visit. But Damian Martinez out of Miami. He's another really good one. All those guys, I think, would be great fits if they found a way to get them tomorrow in the draft. Running back would be a big get if they were able to land that tomorrow.
I regret that I didn't get to ask Ray this question, but one scenario that he has come back to a couple of times, I think, in his 7-round mock drafts is double dipping on the defensive line. The name I see that's falling into a range for the Steelers, Big Al Collins.
Yeah.
Do you think about that at all, Chris? Given all these needs, we've spent so much time talking about a quarterback, running back. If he's there, and when you're getting close to being on the clock, do you think about double dipping? Or are you satisfied enough with having gotten Derrick Harmon and knowing you still have Cam Hayward for another year, Keanu Benton, still for the intermediate term at the very least? Are you satisfied with where this defensive line is?
No, I think they need another guy here. But here's the thing: when you get later in the draft, you start to look for specialists on the D line. That's something I asked Mike Tomlin about. When you draft a D tackle, do you draft specifically for 3 tech versus 5 tech versus nose and all these things? And he said, when you draft high enough, pedigree beats out role specifics. And that's where I think that they looked at like guys like Kenneth Grant, Derrick Harmon. didn't matter what you thought about. They were going to be, you could plug them anywhere in the D-line. They were going to figure out a way to make it work. But the later you go, the more specific you get. And like a Ty Robinson, a defensive tackle out of Nebraska, that's more of a pass rushing type. And, you know, guys like him, I think could be interesting picks in the 3rd or 4th round. But you're looking, like, now you got Derrick Harmon. Now you need to get a guy that could specialize in something. But I'll give you one that actually, who's very familiar with Derrick Harmon. You know what I'm talking about? Jamari Caldwell, Derrick Harmon's teammate at Oregon. I think he could be a good 4th round pick because he is the pure nose tackle. And as Mike Tomlin said, the pure nose is a disappearing animal in today's NFL. But when you want to stuff the run, you need guys that can fit in there. Caldwell is one of those bigger, just two down type of defensive tackle who would come in the pinch to help against the run, and when they're in the 3-4, and then allow them to rotate to keep their guys more healthy. So it's certainly there. I don't think it'll be a 3rd round move, though. I think it'll be a 4th or a 5th round move.
Yeah, I was going to say deeper in the draft if you're looking for a player of that caliber.
I think are we still waiting for the Chiefs pick here?
The Chiefs are still on the clock.
Their pick was in immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Looking here, I still don't have anything.
How does that trade happen?
They're taking Josh Simmons.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
I had them going after Connerly, I think, but he's off the board. And in my mock, I had Simmons going much earlier. So that makes a lot of sense. But Simmons makes a lot. Hey, shout out Brian Batko. He picked the Chiefs picking up Simmons in his just at 31 instead of 32.
That's a good pick.
All right, well, so we're winding down here. Any final thoughts? Let's get to final thoughts for you guys. I'll start with you, Derrick. It can be about the Steelers. It can be about your Eagles. It can be about the NFL in general. What stuck out to you tonight? Themes of the night as you look toward day 2.
I guess I'll go a little generic. Shedeur Sanders is going to make all, I'll say, 25 teams who could have taken a quarterback or 20 teams who could have taken a quarterback pay. And I feel very passionately about that. I think that we are very interested in his athletic profile, which I find very interesting, that we have never dived into a quarterback's athletic profile to this nature, at least in my personal opinion. I still think he is relatively Patrick Mahomes athletic. Size can be an issue, and holding the ball too long can be an issue, but I think he played behind the battle line. I think he played with, besides Travis Hunter, I don't think he played with great skill position players, and I think we saw a lot of good things on tape. So I think that Shedeur Sanders is a lot better than these draft analysis may have you thinking.
Chris, as you look toward day 2, what are your final thoughts for the evening?
I don't know if Shedeur Sanders is going to make people pay, Derrick. I think he's going to go somewhere and he'll be fine. But I don't see it with him as the superstar. I think if he was, I mean, again, he could prove people wrong. I'm not holding that against him. And again, I think there's been a very big difference in how he gets talked about. Like me,
I agree.
I look at his on-field stuff. That's my whole thing. The people that are like, oh, I don't like his demeanor. I think he's too cocky. Shut up. Like, that's not at all what's going on here. I think the thing is that when you look at his arm strength, like, he has to float. Like, honestly, like, he's going to throw a lot like Russell Wilson did this past year.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, that's fine for a $1 million quarterback that you're only hanging on to for a year. But when you take a guy in the first round, you need something more than that. And I think that's where it could be. Again, if he processes the field at a high level consistently and makes it so that he beats all that, hey, more power to him. But I think that's where it's going to be. But I'll be interested. I want to know where he falls, because
me too. If
he keeps going down in the second round, like, if I'm the Steelers, I do consider, like, being aware of that, because I think that, again, first round, but, like, once we're in the second round, like, now this is where I thought his real value was. And so I'd be intrigued by that. But of all the falling guys here, I'm really intrigued about Will Johnson. How serious is that knee injury? Mike Green, another big name I did not see get called. He had some red flags, but I think that he's a heck of an athlete. When I watched him go up against guys one-on-one in the Senior Bowl, I was like, that guy's a super edge rusher. I want to know where he's going. Luther Burden's still on the board. Nick Emanworry's still on the board. There's a lot of options here. The only problem with the Steelers, they don't have a second-round pick, because like this time last year, we were staring at I was like, Zach Frazier's going to be sitting right there, buddy. And sure enough, he was. I think that's the thing that the Steelers have to, is that they either have to trade up and get higher in this draft class, or they just have to wait it out, see who falls into that 70s range, and then with their pick at 83, then they can start to leverage, okay, where do we want to go here?
All right, and with that, we are going to wrap the show for the evening. Stay tuned tomorrow. We talked about possibly starting a little bit later if the Steelers didn't make a move. Obviously, the second round starts at 7 p.m. We may start a little bit later because we've got a lot of mileage to get to number 83 overall. So just make sure if you enjoyed the stream tonight, you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you can see us go live whenever we start for day 2 of the NFL draft. Obviously, things could change. The Steelers can make a trade between here and the beginning of the draft, so we may move the thing back up, but just make sure you're subscribed. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. We want to thank Mike's Beer Bar for hosting us. Second year coming down here. They've been great. Hundreds of local beers. If you have and don't have any plans for the weekend, or at least for Friday, come on down tomorrow. We'd love to see you. Say hi to us. If you're not able to come, make sure you enjoy the show. Also want to thank a lot of other people. We had myself, Christopher Carter, Derek Stillier on the mics right now. We had Jason Mackey earlier. We had Ray Fittipaldo, Brian Batko, Paul Zeise joining us remotely. We also had an awesome off-air team. Andrew Rush, Samara McCallum, Chris Dell, Isaiah Maldonado, all doing great work to get this operation off the ground tonight at Mike's. So big shout out to them. Thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you again tomorrow night.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.